Good morning, everyone. So nice to see all the happy faces. So we will call this meeting to order. It is 9:04, 9:03, and we will begin with roll call and establishment of quorum.
Tanya McMillian,
Present.
Dale Armstrong,
Present.
Karen Brandon,
Present.
Katarina Ellaby,
Present.
Sam Q,
Present.
Alicia Rubin-Amen. I'm here. All members are present and the board has a quorum.
Thank you. Now we will have our weakest board members, and who will give us our board's mission statement.
Good morning. To advance and protect the interests of people of California by the effective administration of the Physical Therapy Practice Act.
Now we will move to item number 4, the review and approval of March 22nd, 23rd, 2023 meeting minutes.
Okay, good morning. Okay, you guys ready for the, okay. So we'll start from the meeting materials, page 8. Do we have any changes on page 8? Okay. Is there? Page 9.
Kimberly, may I just interrupt for a moment?
Yes.
I just want to confirm that you received my notes through email, or did you want me to repeat
I
them?
have them on the email. The
Okay.
changes are already made.
Okay, you're
Yeah,
good. Okay,
yep.
thank you.
Page 9. Page 10. Page 11.
Kim, I think at the bottom under B, licensing services, I think it's just missing an S at the end of member.
Okay. Thank you. Page 12. Page 13.
Second paragraph, line 200, there's just an extra F there after opportunity.
Oh, yes. Page 14. Page 15.
I have something. Second paragraph, I think after 2.4, I think it's analyze the program's operations.
Yes. Thank you. Page 16.
Line 317, at the end of the line, beginning of that sentence, this will be discussed.
Page 18. Page 19. Page 20.
Actually, Kim, on 19,
Yes.
line 417, just the sub part B, Department of Consumer Affairs.
Page 20. Page 21. Page 22. Page 23. Page 24. Page 25. Page 26. Page 27. Page 28. Page 29. Page 30.
On line 859, I'm just missing an A at the end of the first part of my last name.
Page 31. Page 32. Page 33. Page 34. Yes.
Kim, I'm gonna send it to you long form, but I think there's an omission of my statement
Okay.
that probably could go at line 980, indicating Dr. Brandon stated that this may cause unreported cases, as in the case of pediatric patients seen at her facility. It's long. I can send
Okay,
it.
just send
Yeah.
it to me. Thank you. Do you
'Cause
want?
it was just my whole statement's missing.
Okay. Page 34. Page 35. Page 36. Page 37. Page 38. Page 39. Page 40. Page 41. Page 42. Page 43. Page 44. Page 45. And page 46. Any questions?
Before I make a motion to approve the minutes, can I ask Ms. Brendan, can you please just give us the essence of what your statement will be so that we can accept those edits?
Sorry. Okay, so around, we said line 980 after Ms. McMillan's statement. My statement is that I indicated that this bill, AB 1028, may cause underreported cases with pediatric patients seeking rehabilitation services, as in at my facility and others like it.
Thank you. I move to approve the March 2023 minutes with the said edits.
I second.
Okay, motion has been moved and seconded. Any comment from the board? Further comment? Any public comment? Hearing none. Thank you, Kim. Motion
Thank you.
has been moved and
Thank you.
approved. Oh, Thank you.
Yes.
It's been a minute. Roll call vote, please.
Tanya McMillian,
Aye.
Dale Armstrong,
Aye.
Karen Brandon,
Aye.
Katarina Alabi,
Aye.
Samuel Q,
Michael Kenneth, legal counsel. That is entirely up to you. I think there's a recommendation from the department that if a member didn't attend the meeting, that they abstain
Okay.
on that, but that is your decision.
Okay. I abstain. So.
thank you. Alicia Ben Ahmed. 5-0, motion carried, 1 abstention.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 5, the president's report. Let's go to our 2023 meeting calendar and Jason, Linda Hand.
With the way 23 has been going, we just want to revisit the rest of the calendar and make sure that everybody is good for the December meeting. The materials in this meeting are kind of like a complex spider web because we'll be touching on a number of different topics and they all kind of relate to each other. So the 7th and 8th, we do intend to be the strategic plan meeting. So the first day, 1 day of strategic planning, and the second day board business. It will be in Sacramento. And so I want to make sure we're all okay for attendance and that we'll all be in attendance in Sacramento for that. There are a couple other dates that are in the 23 calendar that are of note also. We have a FSBPT educational meeting, and we've had some change in composition of the board, so that's affected our delegate and alternate delegate selection. Ms. Ellaby will be now the primary alternate delegate, serving as delegate. And if you remember correctly, the last time that we did elections, we said that we would do the rest of the alternate delegates in alphabetical order. And so now we're looking at potentially a second alternate delegate to attend the meeting. So look at your calendars, please. And I'll just ask for your availability, if at all possible, to attend that meeting with Katarina and I. Dr. Armstrong, any possibility of October?
I'm actually not available those dates.
Okay. And so for clarity also, the dates we're talking about are the 19th, 20th, and 21st of October. Next in line would be Dr. Brandon.
I'm sorry, I'm committed.
Okay. Ms. McMillian?
I am available, but let's see who else.
So let's go through also. Okay. Dr. Rubina Amen?
I'm counting on Ms. McMillian being available.
Okay. And then I think of interest also would be Mr. Quee.
Yes.
Go ahead and say.
So
I believe I'm available.
So for potentiality, we have Ms. McMillian and Mr. Quee. Dr. R.A., maybe not so much.
I am available, but I think if Mr. Quee can make it, if his schedule allows him, it's a great way for him as a new board member.
Agreed.
To just jump on in and see what it's all about.
Yeah, agreed. I think that's an excellent idea. So my staff will work with Mr. Quee to get those arrangements done. Assuming Mr. Quee is still willing. I can't see.
Just for clarification, is it all 3 days?
It's
in
all 3
advance?
days, and there's actually a travel day fore and aft.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Got it, Jason.
For 2023, I think we are good.
I do have a question, Mr. Kaiser,
Yes.
about the December meeting. In general, our board meetings have 2 days worth of business. And so my concern is that we're cutting a day out for strategic planning. I'm just wondering if we will have enough time in one day to get all of our board business done versus 2 days.
It's a legitimate concern, and it is a little bit unorthodox given our situation. I would still have recommended a 3-day meeting. Coincidentally, we haven't had a lot of volume as it pertains to petition hearings, which is a good portion of our board business on one given day. We'll also be on the other side of the legislative calendar, so that won't be as heavy as a lift for that particular agenda item. So I think without knowing too much of what we might have in closed session, the only other things that you'd have to consider for a December meeting is another election. We usually hold elections in December. But I think between a review of minutes from this meeting, board calendar review, elections, and then each individual unit presentation, that we could do that in a single day.
Should December actually get busy with closed session and petitions?
I would say that there's always a potential that I might ask for an interim meeting or maybe even extension to the December meeting. And I guess we could kind of look at that now, considering the 6th as a possibility. If that is the case, does anybody have an issue or a conflict with the addition of the 6th? I know that kind of, pushes that out for a few of you, because that now means you would be traveling the day before, which is technically the 5th. So
Still 23.
I think it looks good, Jason.
okay, so what I would want to do is keep the schedule as is, but within the next 30 days or so, should we know a little bit more, you may receive notification from staff that we're extending it to the 5th or to the 6th, 7th, and 8th to allow for board business and enough time to accomplish the strategic plan as well. The one thing I wouldn't want to do is schedule it for 3 and then have, only enough to have an hour or two on the second day or something like that. So having said that, having a little extra time for the strat plan itself is always nice too.
Right. Any public comment on the 2023 calendar? Hearing none, so
Madam President, I just make one more addition.
yes.
If it's the wish of the board to have a 3-day meeting, I'm not hesitating in that. I'm not even advising to not. I just want to make sure that that's clear. We were just trying to utilize the attendance that we already had on the books. But as a group, if you'd like to extend it to 3 days, we can make that decision now.
For me, the plan as is fine. And then letting us know within the next 30 days if another day is needed, that would be fine with me too, but I'd like to hear from others.
What I've seen in the past is if we needed more time for the meetings, we started at 8 and then did like a working lunch. So we could maximize the 2 days that we did have already on the books, but
Yeah.
I'm open to an additional day also.
The other thing I'd add to that is scheduled for the 7th as is for strategic plan. Yes, we could do a working lunch, but we could also go over. It's a little bit more casual of an event. You will be working in a workshop style setting with a facilitator from Solid, going through the strategic plan, looking at your mission statement, your vision statement, your values, your goals and objectives. And if we happen to go over, we have reserved the room late into the evening. So we've accommodated for that.
I think just to be on the safe side and considering how everyone's calendars and schedules tend to fill up, I think we might want to go ahead and add
The 3rd day?
the 3rd day. And if it appears as if we might not need it, at least it's easier to remove it
Sure,
than trying to rearrange folks' calendars and schedules.
sure.
I have a question. If you had to remove it, would you remove the 6th or the one after the last day?
It would be the 6th, correct?
I'll have to work with Solid trying to figure out. So I would assume that I would at least recommend that the first day should be reserved for the strategic plan itself. I wouldn't want you to get mired down with board business, burnout, moral injury, that kind of thing, and come into the strategic plan not as, peppy as I know you guys to be early in the morning with coffee. So a lot of that energy focused on the strategic plan. So I would, if we do that and we move it to the 6th, if anything, we could end early on Friday the 8th, which, that's not a bad thing either.
Right. Historically, those late night meetings are very long.
Yeah,
So
yeah. 8 hours is long enough. 12 hours starts to become.
yeah.
Jason, can you remind us, 5 years ago when we did strategic planning, the first day was the work day, as you described, and then did we actually adopt it at the meeting the next day?
Correct. We were able to complete it in that single day.
And so if there are some loose ends that we need to tie up regarding strategic plan for some reason, we'll still be able to have that discussion.
On the second day, yes.
Okay,
It'll be agendized that way, just for.
thank you.
So staff and I will arrange to add the 6th.
Is that something that needs a vote or just? So we need to make a motion to add the 6th
Add
to the
additional day and adopt
2023.
the 2023
Calendar.
amendment.
Okay.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further comment, board members? Any public comment? Okay, then let's do a roll call vote.
Tanya McMillian,
Aye.
Dale Armstrong,
Aye.
Karen Brandon,
Aye.
Katarina Ellaby,
Aye.
Samuel Pugh,
Aye.
Alicia Rabin Ahmed,
Aye.
6-0, motion carried.
Thank you. Jason, moving on to 2024 meeting calendar.
And in looking at the 24 calendar, again, we just want to make sure that the dates that we have set in place for the 4 board meetings still work with members' individual calendars, or if there's any kind of conflicts that you may be aware of now, or any shifting around that might need to be done to accommodate those calendars. So you'll see the meetings highlighted in red. And so we have typically the 3rd week, so March 20th and 21st, June 20th and 21st, September 18th and 19th, and December 5th and 6th. And we'll be adhering to kind of the SoCal, NorCal calendar that we've held before.
I had a question. You've got the CPTA annual meeting listed twice, April and September. Is that correct? Is it a different type of CPTA meeting? I'm just asking because I'm wondering when the September CPTA meeting is going to be announced, the dates.
So some of that is placeholder for us, assuming location and, typically 3rd week of that month kind of thing. So we don't know for sure just yet. And unfortunately, the April dates are blanked out on my PDF. Okay. So in the conversion of the PDF, we've had the highlights for those Tuesday dates, but we'll get those Tuesday dates and get clarity for you.
So
They may be test dates.
So we're anticipating that the September meeting in Loma Linda is not going to be on the same weekend as the CPTA annual meeting. That's what I'm trying to clarify.
Yeah, I don't know that it will or won't. And so depending on where CPTA chooses their next venue, that might be beneficial or not. They've been in SoCal now twice, and so they may come to NorCal, which might make it a little difficult for us to be in Loma Linda or not. We do have a volunteer. Mitch Kay has stood up. He might be able to share a little inside information with us.
Mitch Kay, licensee, as well as member of the California Chapter Physical Therapy Association. The 2024 meeting is in San Francisco, and there is no meeting that I'm aware of in April. I don't have the exact dates for the San Francisco meeting, but by the end of the meeting, I can certainly give it to you, if not before.
And I'm kind of looking out at staff, but I think the highlights for the April section are test dates. Is that correct? Okay, so that's the color shading is similar, but those are test dates. So, Mitch, do you happen to know what dates they've chosen for 24? Okay.
Mr. Kaiser, generally it's on the weekend, right? It's
Yeah.
a Saturday, Sunday.
Saturday, Sunday.
So as long as there's no overlap, even if there's a travel for those who
Yeah.
participate.
And this is kind of a selfish plug, and I know it's long off into the distance with 24. Should that be Loma Linda 18th, 19th, and as an example, San Francisco 21st, 22nd. Those of you as professionals that may be in attendance for the CPTA convention anyway, please let us know, because we'd love to have you come by the booth and help us represent as the regulator. We'll be doing that this year, next month, in Long Beach. And so we know we have a few locals that might be able to stop by and make a presence. So. Any other possible conflicts in schedule or anything that needs to be? What I really want to focus on is the June portion of the 2024 meeting, so that we make sure that we don't repeat the cancellation of the June meeting twice in a row, 3 times in a row at that point. So.
Can I get a motion?
Yeah, there's still time. We don't necessarily have to adopt it this meeting. Typically, we usually wait until the December meeting before we motion to adopt.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Moving on to item number 6, the executive officer's report.
I actually think there's a small bit of housekeeping under the president's report. Maybe a swearing in.
Oh, you're right. Sam. Okay.
So if we could have Mr. Quee and Madam President step out in front of the dais.
And you do this as so I
Samuel Q.
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
or affirm
or affirm
that I will support
that I will support
and defend the Constitution of the United States
and defend the constitutions of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith
and I will bear true faith
and allegiance
and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
and I take this obligation freely
without
without
any mental reservation
any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will
and that I will
well and faithfully
well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which
upon which
I am about to enter.
I'm about to enter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy
Thank you.
birthday.
Okay.
And I just like to take, I see the dean left, but I'd like to, on behalf of the board, thank Diana and the West Coast University family for welcoming us into your space. And thank you on behalf of everyone. I'll give everybody a round of applause. So now moving on to item number 6, the executive officer's report.
So I have some brief updates for you. First of all, it is good to see all of you. It's been a while, right? We did have a bit of a perfect storm and some unfortunate set of circumstances in June that forced us to cancel that meeting. But we're picking up where we left off, with the exception of our strategic plan, which we'll be handling in December. The theme at the board since the canceled June meeting at this point, I could say, has just been busy, extremely busy. So there are a few announcements to make regarding appointments to the board, some new faces among us. I'd like to welcome Sam Q to the board. Mr. Q comes to us as an assembly speaker appointment. He has a great deal of what I would call board experience, serving as a commissioner and as a member of several different councils. Mr. Quee replaces Jonathan Irvin in his appointment. And so we'd like to thank Mr. Quee and welcome him for his commitment and service. I'd also like to thank Jonathan Irvin for his service. And I did speak to him shortly in July. And he wanted me to pass on to you as members, hello, farewell, and I'll miss you guys. So. We still have one vacancy to be filled, a governor's professional position. So Dr. Drummer's position. If you happen to know a PT that might be interested in serving, they can apply at the governor's website, and they can also find that information for application on our website as well. And then I'll move on to staffing.
Jason, before you do,
Yes.
do we have any communication with the appointment secretary on if they're moving on that or?
No direct communication at this point. I have had conversations with DCA, and I do know that appointments have been coming. In fact, if you watch the governor's press releases, there's been a number of appointments to even DCA boards, but a lot of other state entities have been receiving appointments. And again, because of just the end of the legislative session and just the urgency around the signing of bills and all, and we'll talk about that in the legislative report also, they are extremely busy. So
The appointment secretary and everybody around that process?
Everybody around that process. So all being drawn in different directions. And like I said, appointments still being made. But so some of the appointments that I've seen made in DCA are much longer vacancy terms than what we've experienced, or even multiple, right? So a board may have multiple vacancies that may be making it hard for them to establish a quorum. And so I think they're kind of prioritizing some of those appointments and getting some of those done so the boards can still, maintain their level of product.
So this past June, we were not able to make quorum, but that wasn't because we had vacancies. That was because of other issues, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Right. So not a vacancy issue for us. We did have just like I described, an unfortunate set of circumstances and a bit of a perfect storm, which is similar to the June meeting in 2022.
Mhm.
Right. There's some things between the pandemic and COVID that you just can't account for. And in an abundance of caution in 22, we canceled that meeting. In this particular instance, our lack of quorum was completely understandable based on each individual's own set of circumstances. Just while for us is kind of rare, life happens.
Absolutely.
It's going to happen sometimes.
So I'm gonna put you on the spot just a little bit. If you have your crystal ball, what is a reasonable amount of time for this board to expect that vacancy to be filled?
I would certainly say before the end of the year, right? So once the lull of the legislative session passes by, which we're talking about 2 weeks from now, I could see that those appointments start coming in a little bit more frequently.
Thank you.
So. Okay. Moving on to staffing. In my executive officer reports in the past, I've usually come and I've announced to you new appointments, announcements of retirements, those kind of things. I'm going to do it a little bit differently this time. I'm going to let the managers in those particular units report on that movement and those new appointments themselves. And I'm going to focus on a little bit different part of it. And that's just the sheer number of vacancies that we have at staff right now. So there are 6 vacancies across our board. 4 in applications, 2 of which are new authorities as of July 1. 1 in continuing competency and 1 in the CPS unit. So we're right at a 20% vacancy rate. And that's unusual for us. We all feel like we've had a certain number of vacancies that's been ongoing for quite some time. And there's a bit of a trickle down. We can actually trace one of our vacancies right now going as far back to the retirement of our assistant executive officer, right? It's just this kind of domino effect that kind of happens. But as you can imagine, 20% vacancy rate could or really should result in some kind of backlogs or performance issues. But staff have really taken it in stride. And when I say staff, I mean staff in so many different ways. So the applications and licensing unit, probably one of the hardest hit with vacancies, and also at the same time, and we'll talk about this in our statistical reports, an increase in the number of applications received, right? And so, but keeping status quo. So kudos to applications and licensing for that. But also even the admin staff, those that are in charge of the human resources part of this, the filling of the vacancies, the drawing of the duty statements, the recruitments, the arranging for the interviews, and all of those kind of things. There's so many of those to be done. That's a lot to organize. And also continuing competency, that unit is typically 3 people, 2 of which are part-time already. And so now the 1 full-time position is vacant. And so they're, where I say 20% across the board, the continuing competency unit is at a 50% vacancy rate at that point. And then the Consumer Protection Services unit has had their share of vacancies that have kind of moved around a little bit, and we've had some vacancies filled. But enforcement is one of those things where the quality that you see in those cases is correlated or directly dependent upon the number of cases per analyst. And so every time we kind of shift cases over and have somebody kind of take up that slack, it will bottleneck a little bit. And as then we bring on a new member, we still have to train that member up, and there's a learning curve there. And so we have 1 more enforcement vacancy to fill, and I don't have anything wooden to knock on right now, but just, that's where we are when it comes to the vacancies. The other part of that is the management of those vacancies. And so the managers of each individual unit kudos to them for filling in and being, you know, the mortar between the bricks, making sure that those things don't drop, you know, between the cracks and get left undone. And even surely just managing the workload as it's transferred from one analyst to another is quite a task. For application services, I've come to you a number of times talking about the increase in the number of programs, especially when it relates to the physical therapy assistant programs, and how we can expect to see a greater number of applications in the future, and that's going to be an impact on staff. This report, you'll see some of those numbers reflected in the statistics. For consumer protection services, true to form, like other programs, the enforcement program has experienced change as well, as we mentioned. But aside from the vacancies and moving around, Carol Phelps has done an excellent job in maintaining the status quo and keeping, you know, our horizon projects still on the horizon. So we're still working on things like training for D of I and training for expert consultants. Outreach. I just want to say that April's back. April Beauchamps is the board education and communication coordinator, and she has returned, and we are busier for it. We've tackled some pretty big projects, think website or maybe even a little TikTok. We have outreach presentations scheduled well into the future, and we have a pretty busy rest of the year. We've kind of talked about the calendar here, but in addition to that, starting next week with 2 more outreach presentations, and then 2 more outreach presentations the week after that, and then 3 more outreach presentations the week after that, and then the CPTA convention, and so on and so forth. So, and I'll have more to share when we get to the CPTA and FSBPT report outs for that. And that is it for the executive officer's report, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I have a couple. Vacancies. Can you give us an idea of how long vacancies go unfilled? Like, what's reasonable? How difficult is it to fill those vacancies? Are they just sitting there? We don't have qualified people. How does that all work?
Anecdotally, I can tell you that vacancies do seem to be taking a little bit longer than normal in kind of a post-pandemic era. There does seem to be a lot of shifting in state service, but that's, when I say that, I mean statewide. Civil service employees are, you know, reaching out and finding new things and new departments to work for. And so that kind of mixes up the selection pool. What would typically take, I would say, anywhere from 3 to 4 months, start to finish, is now taking about 6. The issue that we've had, though, sometimes is that it can be a domino effect when we have a vacancy that the best and most suitable candidate happens to be an internal candidate that is promoting into one of our positions, which then turns around and creates a new vacancy for where they were sitting, and so on and so forth. So as an example, we said when Elsa Barra retired from the assistant executive officer, the recruitment for that took some time. We brought Sarah Conley on, who happened to be the applications and licensing manager at the time, which created a vacancy for her, which has then been filled by Valerie Kearney, which created a vacancy at the lead analyst position in applications and licensing, which is so on, you know, so there's your kind of an example of how things can kind of trace back. I would say, and I might ask, if anybody has anything to add to that, please feel free. I have seen it's a little bit harder to get candidates, right? The lists are a little bit shorter. The number of applications received is less. And that's surprising for me because those are analytical positions. They're not entry-level positions. They are potential for promotion for other folks in the Department of Consumer Affairs or anywhere else within the state. So it is a little surprising, but I've also heard from colleagues at other departments that that's pretty normal right now. It just seems like coming out of the pandemic era that there is kind of a lot of shifting around and uncertainty.
Jason, I have a question. I'm on our fancy new website, which looks amazing, by the way. And I went to career opportunities
Mhm.
and it took me to Cal Careers, but then it doesn't list any of our open vacancies on that page.
Right. So we had one vacancy that the recruitment just closed. And so that is a live page of what recruitments are open right now. And so we have 2 recruitments that you'll see come to that page in the next 2 weeks or so. We're still drawing up the duty statements and forming that. And then, like I said, we had 2 that just closed. So, but that's a good page to check for anybody that, well, one, wants to come work here at our board. But that single link, while it's parameterized for the physical therapy board, once you get there, you can change the options in the top of the page and look at all of the Department of Consumer Affairs or all of that particular classification for the state. And so it's filterable that way. But you will see a couple recruitments show up there.
Jason, is everyone on site now, or are we still?
We're still in a hybrid.
Remote
We're
and
still in a
hybrid?
hybrid schedule. We average about 2 days into the office. We have some staff that, just by the nature of their work, can't telework. They have to be, present in the building. Things like cashiering or receptionist work or something like that. It's necessary for them to be in the building. And then there are some staff that, again, by the nature of their work, they can telework more than just the 2 or just the 3 days a week. We are looking at that and reassessing. And I do think that there's as we're looking at our vacancies, one of the things about those vacancies, it's much easier to train people in person than it is to have them remote or from afar. And so you may see us switching from 2 days in, 3 days out to 3 days in, 2 days out.
Are there any remote positions in those vacancies, or are all of the positions on site?
All of the positions are hybrid. But in the beginning, when we bring somebody in on board, we usually have them work 5 days a week on site as part of that training portion of it. But dependent on the position we're talking about, there's a potentiality that they may be able to telework a day or 2 a week.
And then last
But there
question.
aren't any positions that are pure telework.
Okay. And the last question was enforcement with Monty. What's happening with the
Second
Yeah.
probation monitor. So we used a little bit of history to go back a few years ago when we were looking at the number of probationers to the number of probation monitors. The ratio was a little high. We wanted to have Monty be able to be split into 2 people, if you will. We wanted to clone him and make 2 of them, one for Southern Cal, one for Northern Cal, something like that, or just divide the list of probationers up. We got the authority to fill that position, but then we went into the pandemic, right? And COVID kind of shut everything down, and it allowed us to it required us to monitor those probationers in new ways, via Teams, remotely, more frequent phone calls, where typically he would have traveled to those practices and done, firsthand observations. Couldn't really do that. And simultaneously, at the same time, the number of our probationers started going down a little bit for a number of different reasons. So currently, I think he's right at where he needs to be as far as the number of probationers. And so we've reutilized that position, reclassified it, and moved it to another unit. But it's not to say that we may not revisit this issue again as we come out of the pandemic and we want to go back to traveling more. If the probation ratio to probation monitor goes up a little bit, we might have to seek another authority. So,
Would you seek another authority or appoint that position back to what it was for?
we would seek another authority. In this case, we reutilized that position to create a ADA and IT position for the board, which was convenient and coincidental,
Mhm.
right? So we knew we were getting there. Once we realized we didn't need a second probation monitor, we could reclassify that position. The board has grown to a size now where an IT position and then even our ability to be in compliance with the ADA rules and laws was becoming more apparent. And so we reclassified that position. Vincent Azar sits in that position now. So utilizing that as permanent. we've made the argument before in a BCP to get another Monty.
Mhm.
So we're familiar with what we need to do and how we need to do it. And so we're just kind of keeping a close eye on those statistics to see if we're at that threshold yet.
How many staff do we have now?
30.
And how many did we have 5 years ago?
Well, that's a good question.
24?
5 years ago, don't quote me on it, but I would say, I want to say it's like 21.7 or some weird, strange number.
So we've added well. We do
Yeah.
have vacancies. But can you give us a general sense of how you feel we are staffed as a board?
Sure. For even a little bit more clarity, when I took over as the executive officer, we had 13 positions, and so we had not kind of kept up with the pace of the profession itself, and the profession has just keeps continuing to grow, and it's kind of it's odd to watch, right? So my colleagues in other healthcare professions don't have the same growing pains that we did in trying to catch up with our profession. Where we are now at 30, assuming that all of the vacancies are filled, I think we are good. I think that there are a couple projects on the horizon, at least, but at that point, they're just at the idea stage, right? And one of those might be another probation monitor, right? Statistics don't show that I need it necessarily just yet, but it's something that we have to kind of keep an eye on. Applications and licensing is one of those where, as in this case, we've been talking about this for over a year now. With the increase in the PTA programs, the applications received for that is now starting to be, you'll see it in the statistics of this report, significant enough that you could start dividing those applications received if you want to maintain the same performance by an additional body. Well, we have that. We have the two positions that we did in BCPs that are effective July 1, and we're just now getting around to filling those positions. Once those vacancies are done, I think we're good, but that's another one where we'll have to kind of keep an eye on. I mean, there's still 7 programs in development for PTA. Does that sound right? Yeah. So 7 or 8 programs that are on the horizon again. And that's enough of an increase to even warrant maybe another position in the next 2 or 3 years.
I think what's a little tricky for me to wrap my head around as a board member is, and this can be addressed tomorrow under the licensing and application unit report, is the efficiencies that we're seeing with Breeze, although we do know that there was still some work that was still there and created, even though there's some efficiencies in Breeze. We have that, and we have an increase in licensees and applications. It's difficult as a board member to understand how much more work is there that constitutes or justifies another position. That's what's
Sure.
hard to understand.
Sure.
Yeah.
We're in a phase right now where data is really kind of in our grasp, right? We have it. It's just a matter of trying to kind of filter it out and look at it. And one of the ways that I've been looking at it lately, there are performance measures that the Department of Consumer Affairs has put into place for things like the enforcement program. You guys are familiar with them. They're in the agenda materials all the time. Well, they've also put performance measures in the applications and licensing sections too. And they're intricate in the sense that they break it down into steps and stages, and they account for what work is being done by board staff and what delays are being created by maybe the applicant themselves. And that's good. I mean, we need to do that. We need to look at that in steps. But one of the things that I wanted to look at also was just finality. From the point of application to the time license is issued, what kind of timelines am I looking at? And the efficiencies that we put into place and the additions to staff, and I would probably say it's dependent on a combination of both of those things. One of the things about Breeze is there's a lot of automation involved in Breeze, but with Breeze comes a lot of key data entry, right? Now staff is, for those applications that weren't submitted electronically by the applicant, and even those need corrections sometimes, right? They don't fill it out quite right. There's some omissions. There's things that had to have correspondence from application staff back to the applicant. And now my staff in the applications unit is doing a lot of key data entering into Breeze. We didn't have that in the old CAS system. So it's kind of like more money, more problems. It's kind of like more info, more problems, right? With that information that we collect, more responsibility we have in maintaining it and making sure that it's accurate. Looking at those dates though, anecdotally, just looking at from the applications received to the license issued date, I've seen a week improvement for each fiscal year. So each fiscal year, we've been able to shave about a week of time off of the total time of that application process. The only way to improve upon that any further is divide those cases up so that there's more attention being applied to those applications by a single analyst. So right now, I would say, to use an example in applications and licensing for PT and PTA, we separate PT and PTA new grads, but because of vacancies, the PTA new grads are being handled by somebody who normally wouldn't do it. And as soon as I fill that vacancy, they would. And now you might see a little bit more efficiency coming out of that particular section. As that volume grows, you can expect it to slow down a little bit because now there's more applications flowing through it. And more applications flowing through it can look something like a whole graduating class's applications showing up at once, right? On the same day that we received 2 other graduating classes showing up at once. And so there's a little bit of a slinky effect. But if you could divide that amongst 2 bodies, we can get through it much quicker.
Thank you.
I have a question on that same thing. How does our processing time compare to other groups with the same number of applicants per month or per year?
So other healthcare professionals, or that's a really hard comparison because there's certain things about our application process that may differ, right? So for PTs and PTAs in particular, we have a fixed date testing system. So they can only test 4 times a year, where another profession might have continuous testing. And so that continuous testing might speed it up a little bit. And that's almost converse to what I'm going to say though, right? Because if we had gotten rid of fixed date testing, we had continuous testing, I'd say we would save even more time and our time would look even better. I have no qualms or issues comparing my data to any other board or bureau within the Department of Consumer Affairs. They're rock stars. Our timeframes are excellent. And that's with fixed date testing, right? So some of those boards that may have more volume than we do, say a nursing board, right? So they have 10 times the amount of licensees that we do, 10 times the number of applications. And that alone could slow that process down, but they also have continuous testing. So, but our times are better than theirs.
So which one do we most compare to with both the fixed dates and the number of applicants out of all the ones that are kind of the same level of education in the process?
For the application process alone, I think our closest Venus is probably occupational therapy, except there aren't the same number of programs and there aren't the same number of graduates. So closest Venus for the number of applications received is probably the Board of Behavioral Sciences, but they have continuous. So I mean, it's really difficult to do kind of an apples to apples comparison between us and anyone else. The other part of that is PT has a really beautiful system in the sense that you have one national examination, you have one accrediting body for your schools, as opposed to say, even the medical board, who has multiple pathways to licensure, multiple examination possibilities, acupuncture, chiropractic, there's a lot of different nuanced kind of steps to their application process that are different than ours, more involved in the accreditation process themselves. We're fortunate in that is that this profession kind of solved that problem very early on.
I think you guys are doing a phenomenal job. And, just to note that too, the touch points when someone has to send an application back,
Mhm.
I feel like our time kind of stops in a moment
Yeah.
because the process, and so there has to be a way of identifying that as well in the system, because it's kind of a dance between the applicant and how much they were able to complete their first time around with
Yeah.
their with all their documents and all the correct information. So
Absolutely. And you'll see that in the, we refer to it as a chess clock, right? So, now the correspondence is now on the applicant to fulfill the deficiency, and we're waiting for that deficiency to be fulfilled. You'll see that measurement in DCA's timelines, right? And so that's why our timelines are so good, because our staff get to it, they send it back for a deficiency, and depending on the applicant, it's reasonable to say some are going to get back to you much quicker than others, and some may have given you the wrong email address to begin with, or the wrong mailing address. And so there's some things that can kind of create a backlog there. The other significant factor in what our timelines look like is if one of our applicants fails the national exam the first time, their application time essentially doubles. Right? They usually have that 90 days, but now they have to wait until the next sitting. And so there's an additional 90 days on top of it. And they tend to skew our statistic and drag that statistic towards the other side. So,
because it counts as one application.
always.
Yeah.
Correct.
So it's not like the time starts over.
Right. And so applications are good for 1 year. Theoretically, they could take the exam 3 times in that 1 year period. And so they could really stretch that application out to that full year period.
I have a question about the outreach presentations. Are all of those in person?
No.
There-
So we do have remnants. So next week, I think we have an online presentation for Mendocino, and then we have an in-person presentation for Sac State. Sac State's a little bit easier for us, right? In fact, I think that Sac State presentation is the first of 4 every Friday for 4 weeks. And we use them as kind of a laboratory to experiment on the presentations and how we might take presentations to other schools. But we are starting to get more requests for in-person presentations like we did before the pandemic. But right now, I think the majority of them are still scheduling like a Zoom or a team style presentation. Which for us, I'm okay with right now because of that whole kind of vacancy issue. There's not enough of us to kind of spread out and move around. We will be a little sporadic in September and October, right? And so we had a couple in-person outreach events. In fact, Sarah and Paul, who is our military liaison, went to Fort Irwin last week for a 3-day stint. So there is some in-person being done. Some schools are still wary of letting guest speakers come to the campus too. So we're still kind of looking at that.
Any further questions for Jason? Any public comment?
Mr. K?
Mitch K, I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but September 21st and 22nd will be the 24 California chapter annual conference in San Francisco.
Excellent. Appropriate enough. Thank you, Mitch. Any comments from staff to correct anything that I might have said incorrectly? No? Okay.
Okay, moving on to item number 7, Consumer and Professional Associations and Intergovernmental Relations Report. FSBPT?
I can report on some of the FSBPT stuff, but I'd like Katarina to help me at some point during this presentation. So
Okay.
we attended a leadership issues forum, which was typical mid-year FSBPT meeting, looking at things that are on the horizon for physical therapy and regulation. There was a lot of talk about artificial intelligence and telemedicine, but even some more sensitive topics like sexual boundaries and sexual misconduct among practitioners and guidance and those kind of things. We divided and conquered a little bit and did some separate sessions, but the third day of that meeting, we were invited to a Model Practice Act session where Katarina and I, as well as two representatives from the California chapter of the American Physical Therapy Association, sat down and looked at what is FSBPT/APTA's Model Practice Act and compared it to our existing Practice Act. And it was an interesting drill from my perspective, because one of the things as the administrator that I hear quite often is California's Practice Act is so weird. It's just, what's with your Practice Act? And even from members of the association, right? So, but when we sat down and we actually did the workshop, we realized that about 90% of the Practice Act, or the Model Practice Act, is contained within the California Practice Act. And I use that 90% as a direct quote from Tamika Island, and she won't hold it against me. She's not here now, but representative from CPTA. We had a meeting after, kind of a brief before this meeting just a few weeks ago. And we talked about this experience and just that, like how much of the Practice Act is actually there. Yes, it is written in legalese and it is placed in different areas and it might be worded differently, but the concept and the content is actually there. And their estimation was about 90%. The interesting is that some of that 10% that's not there are some of those hot button topics that we always hear about, like dry needling, right? But a few of the things were things like how hearings are done and whether you use an arbiter or a hearing officer and those kind of things we already have set in place with an administrative, Office of Administrative Hearings. And so while it might be a 10% difference, it's a 10% difference that I kind of think we should have. Our 10% is better at that point, and it's more uniform across all the different practices. So it was an interesting drill, and I think that we have a crosswalk now where we can actually look at what those differences are, kind of keep them on the horizon, and always consider them when we're looking at things like future legislation, proposals by outside entities or even the association, or maybe a legislative proposal that's directed at all of healthcare. We can kind of go look at that, compare it to our existing Practice Act, and then also see how it measures up against FSBPT's Model Practice Act. So I thought it was I kind of relished in the experience a couple times, right? Because I was just like, it is there, So I'd love to hear Kat's take on it.
I thought it was a really interesting activity because rarely does a public member get to engage with CPTA, especially a sit down for a full day. And so I got to give it up to Jason, though, his ability to recall where certain statutes were and regs and what it was like. You have this thing memorized. It's crazy.
You're wrong. In fact, you found statutes for me a few times, right? I said, I know it's there, but I'm trying to find it. Nope.
But I thought it was a great experience, something that I wish we could do more often. Might not be the Model Practice Act, but seeing different ways that CPTA and FSBPT and the board can find synergy. I thought it was a good activity.
I agree. And the numbers are just a jumble in my head, right? But it's the concepts that are contained within each statute that I'm aware of, right? And sometimes where I can't recall the number, or I can't recall it may exist in two different statutes, right? Because that's one of the things that we saw. Like they have a single statute, but we have the same idea split amongst two, and so on. So creating that crosswalk really kind of was a worthwhile exercise in identifying it, especially for the future. Just having these conversations with FSBPT and APTA and the association, because I think it also gave us all an appreciation of just how complete our actual Practice Act is. That everything that we're really looking for really is there.
Can we share that document with the rest of the board? I think
Yeah,
that'd
at
be cool
most,
for them
yeah.
to see.
Absolutely.
I want to thank you both for representing us well. And thank you for bringing up the fact that as a public member, you were able to engage. And that's what we need, is a public member's voice representing our board. So thank you. And I'm wondering or is there anything to point out as far as what wasn't included that might stand out?
I think a couple of the things that are in the Model Practice Act that are, again, hot button topics nationwide are things like dry needling. Some of the issues that may be nationwide issues but aren't necessarily issues in California are, the definition or the difference between manipulation and mobilization. And because some states are really still fighting with that idea. And one of the other things that I think that we can see coming on the horizon is the legalization of marijuana and cannabis, and how that plays into things like topical medications or contraindications in treatment and those kind of things. We're going to see that, coming. And in fact, in October, I think we're doing a presentation. California will be joining Colorado in talking about our experiences being the two most progressive marijuana states, if you will. A lot of the other states are still really coming to grips with introducing, new legislation that created either medicinal authorities or recreational authorities, but now it's starting to trickle down through professions and arrest records and things like that. And it doesn't still have any kind of bearing on licensure judgment. So the other thing that's in the Model Practice Act that is a topic that you are familiar with as a board, but is a recent new addition to the Model Practice Act, is the idea of animal rehabilitation. And so we'll be talking about that a little bit more in the legislative report tomorrow. But, and I believe we'll have some guests that are going to be talking on that as well. But that is now a portion of the Model Practice Act. It was also interesting conversation with that, because some of the models that we saw for animal rehab across the US, and I'll say like Nevada as an example, we really got to see kind of inside how that system works and which boards are affected and how. And so I think there are some models that work well and that I would, see California kind of conforming to, similar to Nevada's. But again, something that's on the horizon and has made its way into the actual Model Practice Act.
So you had this meeting, what's next?
I think they're going to do kind of a comparative analysis from everything that we provided back as input. And I think there is a report out at the October meeting. But I know that the Model Practice Act is a living document. And so that there's probably going to be a few more workshops to kind of talk about the language itself, refinements that might need to be made as a result of these workshops, how it might fit other jurisdictions better, or even optional language that essentially means the same thing, but it's just easier to adopt because of the way that particular jurisdiction's Practice Act is written.
So what's next for CPTA and PTBC?
90% is pretty good.
Yeah.
I don't know that,
Yeah.
There's CPTA will have a representative here later, I think, to share some of the things that they're proposing. They've done a large project in their Legislative Affairs Committee where they're looking at a modernization of the Practice Act. And it includes some of the things that we're talking about when it comes to like dry needling and tissue penetration and those kind of things.
Thank you.
I would say, for any students that are listening or potential pre-licensees, 90% is, I think, pretty significant. And while it may appear that means that there's more laws and regs to, regulate and, enforce, that technically means that California is a very safe place to practice. In a way, we are protecting, the consumer, and we're really optimizing the profession and its ability to serve the community in the safest way possible. So I'm super excited to hear that. And I also, I think that maybe in California, we've just been born in the fire with all of the things that we've had to deal with in Sacramento, that maybe other states just did not have the same types of challenges with other professions and relationships with other professions.
There is an economy of scale for California that's like no other. And, our brother and sister jurisdictions that are similar in size are still much smaller in some way or fashion, right? Texas, not quite the same licensing population, but similar in geographic, where you have urban and you have rural. New York, the opposite. The population density is just crushing them for their geographic size, but still not as many licensees as California. Florida is probably our closest when it comes to population density versus licensing population, but we're just bigger, right? We have more space and we have more licensees. One of the earliest experiences that I ever had with FSBPT was realizing that as the new administrator in the room, that because I was from California, I had exposure to all of these kind of hot button topics that they were talking about, where some jurisdictions would say, oh, we haven't really quite dealt with that yet, or that hasn't come to us yet. I was bewildered, because I was like, how do we have all this? What did I sign up for? Because we literally had, I had 3 of those cases last week, or something like that. And it was just, and it really is that economy of scale. It's the size and the exposure and the volume that leads to that.
Any, do you want to share any updates on the dry needling conversation, Jason?
Only that, to be clear, there's something that I always thought that it's curious for us to push out so that our licensees and our future applicants and students understand, is that the prohibition to dry needling doesn't occur in the Physical Therapy Practice Act. It actually occurs in the Medical Practice Act, right? So the Medical Practice Act essentially says that anyone licensed under Division II, of which all healthcare falls under Division II, cannot penetrate tissue unless they're a physician or surgeon, or their practice act explicitly states that they can. And so an example would be acupuncture. Acupuncture's practice act explicitly states that they can penetrate tissue for the purposes of acupuncture. Our practice act, you only have one authority as physical therapist to penetrate tissue, and that's if you receive a specialty certification for electroneuromyography. I think with this kind of national wave of dry needling, that there is conversation to be had between all of the jurisdictions, regulators alike, and the professional association to determine what's safe. And that is also going to be a conversation that's involving the Medical Board of California and the California Medical Association and those kind of things, because right now they have those prohibitions in place, right? There's no question that California PTs cannot do dry needling. But if it's being seen and it's evidence-based that is a beneficial modality that with proper training could be done by a licensed physical therapist, that's kind of the horizon that we should point the ship towards. Arguably, I would say that there are other specialty certifications that our physical therapists go into that are potentially more controversial than dry needling, right? The damage that could be done in dry needling may not be as egregious or as severe as something as like pelvic floor treatment, right? Sensitivity and the nature of that treatment requires specialty education, but not necessarily a specialty certificate, right? And so we're talking about the broad breadth And as physical therapists, you all tend to go in different directions in your specialties. This just happened to be one that, because of the conflict with the medical board, created this daughter certificate. And it's not something that I would recommend in the future. I would see that as just being part of the general scope, just like the other specialty certifications are. So update, no, not really. Just where we are today, and then potentially where we could be in the future with future legislation. You may see that the association brings the modernization bill. It wouldn't be next year, it would be the year after that. But that might include something like adding tissue penetration to the scope of practice for physical therapists for the purpose of physical therapy modalities, such as dry needling.
Thank you. Any further comment, board members, on FSPPT report? Any public comment? Hearing none. We'll move on to category B, Department of Consumer Affairs, DCA.
We have a representative from the Department of Consumer Affairs on her way up to speak now.
Oh, couldn't see her.
So I think you all have met her probably online at some point, but I'd like to introduce Melissa Gear.
Hi.
She is the Deputy over Board and Bureau Relations.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello and good morning, President McMillian, Vice President Armstrong, Executive Officer Kaiser, and members of the board. I'm Melissa Gear, Deputy Director for Board and Bureau Relations, and I appreciate the opportunity to share the Department of Consumer Affairs update this morning. Before I get started, I would like to take a moment to congratulate and welcome Sam Kui.
Q.
Q.
Yeah.
Sam Q. Welcome and congratulations to the board. And I'd also like to congratulate President McMillian on her reappointment to the board, as well as you're welcome, as well as thank Jonathan Irvin for his service. And I know he's not with us today. Thank you all for your service and commitment to protect California's consumers. Now let's begin. I have several updates and reminders to share, starting with an update on DCA's DEI efforts. On September 29th, 2023, the DEI Steering Committee will hold its quarterly meeting. The committee will be discussing employee engagement, cultural events and observances, membership composition, DEI training, DEI hiring principles, and development of a DEI webpage. The DEI Steering Committee is happy to announce that outside consultant Dr. Bernard Gibson will provide in-person DEI training to DCA managers, supervisors, and leaders in October. In addition, Dr. Gibson will provide virtual training to board members on the morning of October 9th, 2023. Dr. Gibson has 20 years corporate experience managing teams and training employees in business effectiveness. Dr. Gibson also has extensive teaching experience at various colleges, including serving as adjunct faculty since 2006 at University of Massachusetts for the School of Business and Professional Studies. Information on registering for this virtual event has been sent out. If board members are interested in attending this virtual training, please let me know and I can help get you registered. For those that cannot make the training portion will be recorded and be available later. I look forward to updating you in the months ahead on the progress of the DEI Steering Committee. On November 7th, UMass consultant Christopher Veal will provide training on DEI dialogue for leaders to DCA managers, supervisors, and leaders. Veal's training will include example language and tools, discuss psychological safety, and how it impacts these conversations, and include interactive discussion around challenges leaders are facing. Finally, the DEI Steering Committee is pleased to highlight the work of the Board of Barbering and Cosmetology, or BBC, which is collaborating with the Los Angeles County Probation Department to launch the first youth and county level barbering program. The board hopes to have it operational by late winter. Furthermore, the board has been collaborating with the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, or CDCR, to relaunch its testing program within state correctional facilities, expanding to include barbering, and it is anticipated that this will be a large program with 4 facilities committing to include barbering schools. If the board wishes to share its DEI activities with other boards and bureaus, your executive officer can do so with Tanya Corcoran, our DEI Steering Committee Coordinator. Also, to further the department's efforts to reach the Californians we serve, DCA will request boards translate press releases into Spanish, California's top non-English language, establish a standard for translating releases into both English and Spanish, and encourage the evaluation of additional languages that may serve their audiences and enhance the information released to Californians. Next, as you are aware, since July 1st, public meetings are subject to the traditional pre-COVID requirements for open meetings. DCA boards and bureaus should be prepared to conduct public meetings compliant with the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. DCA has a Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act guide available and has provided your executive officer with a list of available meeting locations throughout the state. Please reach out to board and bureau relations with any questions or concerns. DCA is committed to helping the boards to make this a smooth transition. As of August 28th, the department's Division of Legislative Affairs has been monitoring SB 143, which is a trailer bill that includes, among other things, language related to the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. Proposed changes would allow for remote public meetings without notice locations accessible to the public until December 31st. Since this is a budget trailer bill, it will be immediately effective once it is signed by the governor. SB 544, which may allow for some meetings to be held without it noticing the location of the board members, thus allowing remote virtual meetings, is still going through the legislative process, and the department's Division of Legislative Affairs is working with stakeholders and providing updates to the boards and bureaus on the status of the bill. Next up is an update on 2 important projects that we are proud to share with you. The first being the Enlightened Enforcement Project, and the second, the Data Governance Project. The department is implementing the Enlightened Enforcement Project, piloted by the California Dental Board. The project aims to improve procedures, share best practices, and standardize procedures for all boards and bureaus, ultimately creating a template for enforcement policies and procedures. Also, DCA continues to improve its reports regarding licensing and enforcement activities. The director recently led multiple workgroup meetings beginning in late April through early July with staff from each board and bureau to update the data metrics reported in DCA's annual report. DCA's goal is to ensure consistency between the report data in the annual report, DCA's data portal, and board and bureau sunset reports. Ongoing meetings are expected to help build new reports or modify existing ones to provide these new metrics for next year's annual report. Before I close, you may find the following reminders helpful as you begin to plan for the fall. First, before beginning their service or performing official functions, newly appointed and reappointed board members must take the oath of office. The oath may be taken before any officer authorized to administer oaths unless otherwise specified. Board members should make arrangements with their executive officer. Board members must complete the documents listed on the board member appointment checklist, or HR5, and return them to the Office of Human Resources no less than 30 days after their appointment or reappointment. Duties cannot be assumed and appointments cannot be processed until documents are received and are accurately completed. Incomplete packets may delay per diem payments and travel reimbursements to the member. Second, there are 2 DCA-wide mandatory trainings for 2023. This includes sexual harassment prevention training and information security awareness. All DCA employees and appointees, including board members, will need to complete the sexual harassment prevention training this year. Board members must take the 2-hour supervisory training. This training is required every odd-numbered year and is online, self-paced, in approximately 2 hours. Board members with an assigned DCA email are required to complete the Information Security Awareness Fundamentals training. This training addresses everyone's role in protecting DCA data and information. The training is online and required every year. Both the sexual harassment prevention training and information security awareness training are available in the department's learning management system. If you need assistance in accessing LMS in these trainings, please reach out to Board and Bureau Relations. Third, the Attorney General recently issued a press release adding 3 new states to California's restricted travel list, with staggered effective dates in 2023 and 2024 as follows. Wyoming, travel was restricted effective July 14th. Missouri, travel was restricted effective August 28th. And Nebraska, travel will be restricted effective October 1st. If you have any questions, please reach out to your executive officer or Board and Bureau Relations for additional information. And lastly, board members must complete BMONT within 1 year of their appointment or reappointment. On October 10th, 2023, BMONT, our board member orientation training, will be offered virtually. This will be the last meeting of the year. Members can register for this training via LMS. And now, as I close, I just want to say thank you for this opportunity, and I welcome any questions from the board.
Thank you for your report. My question is pertaining to the DEI training, and for our virtual viewers, DEI is diversity, equity, and inclusion, correct? Dr. Bernard Gibson, he's providing the training to whom?
So he's going to be providing the training to both DCA staff, and then there'll also be a day where he's providing training for board members.
Oh.
So all interested board members, I believe that is October 9th, will be able to sign up through the LMS system and then participate in that training virtually.
Okay. And it's only virtual, correct?
That training for board members is only going to be virtual.
Okay.
And if you're unable to attend, it will be taped and you'll be able to then watch it at a later date at your convenience.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further comments, questions?
I'm wondering, how many states are on the no-go list?
There are now,
Like 21?
I think
I think
with this,
it's a little more than 21
I
now.
think it's 27 now
Yeah.
with this additional 3.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Melissa, I had a question about the supervisory training for members if they have a DCA email address.
Yes.
So there are still members with other boards that haven't quite adopted the DCA email address requirement.
Correct.
Is they're not being required to do it because they don't have access to LMS as a result of not having a DCA email address?
No. So you only will be taking the security training if you have a DCA email address, because that's what ties you to our DCA system.
Right. Okay.
So for those boards that don't utilize the dca.ca.gov email address, they do not need to take the
Is it
security
available to
training.
them though?
So it's up to each board, and some boards have adopted that. There
Okay.
is a cost associated with your dca.ca.gov
Mhm.
email address, and so that is why some boards, based on just their financial situations and things of that nature, have chosen not to.
Okay.
But if a board does so choose, then they would need to take that security information training.
So hypothetically, a board that hasn't given each board member a DCA email address, they could still take the security awareness training through LMS.
I want to say hypothetically, yes, because every board member has access to LMS.
Okay.
It's just not required
Yeah.
of those board members. And if I will go back to make sure that what I just said is correct.
Sure.
And if there is an different response, I will let you know. And
Okay.
share that with the
I'm
board.
just I'm thinking from my my own interest in the sense that I might pick on somebody like Jason to say that there's still a value for board members to take that training even if they don't have a DCA email address, because internet exposure is internet exposure. So all the little tips and tricks that you can learn from that training are still worthwhile.
Any further comments for Melissa? Board members, any public comment? Questions?
One kudo, maybe. Thank you for handling all of our requests as quickly as you do when it comes to things like travel and exceptions and out of area, especially here, like in Los Angeles, where a good number of our members are here, but because they would live within that 50-mile range, you know, it's still nice to be able to understand that LA has a traffic issue and it might take them 2 hours to get here. So thank you for that.
George, yes.
I echo that. Thank you too. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
So, moving on to category C, California Physical Therapy Association, CPTA.
Mr. Carey, do you know if your representative is here yet, or are you providing the update? Okay. I guess what I would probably say is maybe we should take a small recess, 15 minutes or something like that, and I'll find out, because we might have to reorder that update. I don't know when the representative will be here.
Okay, so we'll take a 15-minute break. Stay tuned. Okay, we will resume our meeting, and what time is it? 10:58. We're gonna go back to 7C.
So we don't have an update from CPTA. They weren't able to attend, so we don't have representation for that. I do have an update from our previous conversation. Staff did tell me that in 2016 we had a position count of 21.4, so I was off by 0.3 of a person.
Okay. So any further board comment on 7C? Any public comment? Hearing none. So we will move on to item number 8, website presentation. April and Vincent.
Good morning. My name is April Beauchamp. I'm the Communication and Education Liaison for the Physical Therapy Board of California.
Hello, I'm Vincent Azar, and I am the IT and ADA Liaison for the board.
We would first like to start out by thanking Clara Flanagan and Kristen Azar from the Office of Information Systems web team at DCA for all of their hard work and dedication to helping us reach our goal in creating a new, more user-friendly and modern website for our stakeholders. Their expertise along the way was extremely helpful and beneficial in reaching our overall goals, and we are excited to announce that PTBC's new website is now live, and we are happy to walk you all through it today. Thank you. So starting out, this is our homepage. The top bar is consistent throughout the website, and as you can see, we have the California State website. That's where that goes, and then there's back to our homepage. We have all of our social media up there. And then the mail icon, that is to subscribe to our e-blast. And then the navigation header, it also is consistent throughout our whole website as well. And if we scroll down a little bit on the home page, we do have our mission statement now, which before was not on our home page, so we did add that. In the teal bar, it's our most commonly sought out information on the website, so we decided to put it front and center and make it easier for the user to access. And then scrolling down just a little bit more, we have our board meetings for the current year will always be listed here, along with the button to watch the meetings live like today. And then we have our Connect with Us. This again has all of our social media and how to subscribe to our e-blast. Underneath that, it's an RSS Facebook feed. If you are following along on your personal devices, you should be able to see that. With the VPN, it's blocked because we are using a government issued laptop. But on your personal, you would be able to see that and scroll through our feed. And then further down, we have our PTBC, our statistics for the year, and these are updated weekly. So every week, these numbers will change. And it'll also tell you when it was last updated. And then below that, we have our governor, DCA leadership, and then Jason Kaiser, our executive officer, listed there. And at the very bottom, we have some additional resources. As we go through the website, I will stop at the end of every tab and page just to see if you guys have any questions or any comments you would like to make before moving on to the next one. So at this time, are there any questions or comments?
I think the president's picture should be on there with
If it's within my power, done. I will put yours in place of mine.
Can we scroll to the top, please?
Yes.
Okay, so that black bar, I think it's black.
I think the colors may be different on the projector. It's should be gray. That's how I see it on my laptop here. I think it's just the colors might be a little off with the projection.
So you have the different social media sites up there, but then you have it again down below. So you can access those in either place.
Yes.
So when you put the mouse over the eBlast subscription, is there a way to have that say eBlast subscription?
We currently don't have it set up that way. We can look into that to see if there's possibly a tooltip could appear. We'd have to get back to you on that.
Yeah, no problem.
The other spot that you can see that is pretty apparent is down here.
Right.
So there's multiple places to access it.
Yeah, I'm just thinking if I were a consumer and I went to that, I would probably think that I'm emailing somebody, right?
Right.
Yeah, but anyways, if you scroll down a little, I love that you have the mission front and center. Good job, everybody. You guys did great on that. And then you said that the next 5 icons underneath are the most popular reasons people come to the board. So those things are based off of some data that we've collected. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then if you go down, can you please click on Watch the PTBC Meeting Live? I want to see if it pops up.
So it'll take you to DCA's live webcast, and if you scroll all the way down past the calendar, you can click it there, but you can also see right here.
There's a thumbnail of just what was happening a few seconds ago. You could click live, but I'm sure Bryce would like us not to do that.
Okay, yeah, we'll be good, Bryce. Okay, great. And then if you can go back, and then next to the board meetings, is there a link to prior board meetings right there?
Yes, if you click on more meetings, it'll take you to our meetings page, which I'll go over later in the presentation as well. And
Okay.
if you look at on the right, it says on that page, 2017 to 2022 archives. And it's another calendar like this that has all of the agenda, materials, minutes, webcasts. And then also on that page, again, we'll go over it later, you can access our YouTube channel as well. That has links to all of the prior meetings.
Okay, and then if we go back and look at those meetings, so it won't record that there was a June meeting that was canceled?
Going forward, for next year, it'll have all of the meetings listed here. And then, but just because the timing when they made it, they just did the upcoming for the year. But normally it would have the whole calendars list right there.
Okay.
But if you do click in and drill into more meetings
They're listed there, yes.
and you scroll down a little bit, you'll see that the June meeting is there listed and
Phew,
canceled.
perfect. Yep. Great. Yep. And that's actually just perfect.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The homepage section of it is really like what opportunities you have left for the rest of the year.
That makes sense. I think my last comment is, I'm looking at the tabs up top. If I were a consumer of physical therapy services and I came to this website, like, is there a place for public information, or, I mean, where would the public go to find something? Consumers, of course. Okay, that's it for me right now. Thank you.
Any other questions before we move on to the applicants tab?
Is there an option for a blog or something of that sort?
We do have on each of our tabs, there will be, and you'll see an example of it in one of them. There's an alert box that we would put. So if there was something like really important, or it would be put in the tab that it's for. And if it's multiple, so like let's say it was relevant to applicants and licensees, it would be in both of those tabs as you click through them.
April, I think you can hear the enthusiasm in my voice. I'm so excited about this. Thank you, Vincent and
Absolutely.
April. Are you going to be going over the right side of that gray box at some point?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to let you go.
Okay. And so if there are no more other questions, we will go ahead and go into the applicants tab. So when you first click into this, we have how to apply, and then it also has processing time frame expectations there, and then expedited licensure. And then there's another teal box here that is kind of like the home tab, where you will select if you are a U.S. educated PT, PTA new grad, if you're applying by endorsement, foreign PT, foreign PTA, equivalency, and then KEMG and ENMG. So I will go into the PT, PTA new grad one and give you guys a look at what that looks like. They all look the same across when you click on them. The only difference is the requirements that they need, fee differences, things like that. But they will have a side navigation like this. And throughout our whole website, anywhere that there is a side navigation, it'll stay there during the whole time you're in that section. So you don't have to go all the way back out to go back in. So here we have information on applying as our landing page, grounds for denial, due diligence, common acronyms and terms. And then if you go back up to the side navigation, if you start out, we have our process map. This is the step-by-step what you need to do in order to apply for licensure. And then if you go into exam information, this is more information. This has like testing information, things like that. The Cal Law, MPTE, and then the Federation's website is listed on there as well. And then an education verification. This tells you how to submit your P1E and what it is, and so you would click that button right there to pull it up and do that. And then fingerprinting. This has all the fingerprinting requirements, live scan, hard card, and all of that information, as well as the fee and why it's $49, $32 for DOJ, and $17 for FBI. And then we have the photo, and this shows you what that photo should look like. There's even an example there. And then we go into the fees. And again, once you select how you're applying, these will change depending on what you pick. So this is for a new grad, and it has for PT and PTA what the fees are, and then it gives a little information about that as well. And then license applicant status. This talks about the PTLA, PTALA, and what you need in order to qualify for all of that. And then military expedite. So if you are military, or if you're the spouse of a military, anything like that, this tells you how to apply and information on that as well. And then we have the summary and checklist. So the applicant can go through and check off what they've already done. And then it also has, you know, when you click on those, it'll take you to information about those. So if you go to this page and you're like, oh wait, I forgot this, you can go back and see what you need for that. And then underneath our navigation bar, we have the apply now. When you click on that, it'll take you here, which gives you a little bit more information. And when you click continue, it'll take you to Breeze, where you can go and fill out your online application. And then back to the applicant's home tab. So underneath that box, we just have some other resources as well. So report mailing or email address change, name change, the California Laws and Regulations book, the accredited physical therapy and physical therapy assistant programs, and then to appeal licensure denial.
Are those other resources on other parts of this website as well?
Some of them are, so like the name change and
Mhm.
email address change, that'll be in the licensees tab as well. The laws and regs book is throughout the website on different tabs also. So yes, if it applies to other tabs, it'll be in that section as well.
And what's the equivalency applicant?
Oh, it's the same. So it just has the different requirements for this type of an applicant, but the navigation bar is the same throughout. It's just the information within it changes based on how you're applying.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions or comments on this tab?
I think I was the one who asked every single board meeting about the website, and even in between board meetings about the website. And this is so worth the wait. This is fantastic.
One of the things that you'll notice is we tried to make things as easy as possible to find. So there is some overlap as to what you asked just a moment ago. Things that are pertinent to that section, we do try to include it also in those sections so that it's, like I said, easy to find.
Yeah, thank you for that. I also noticed that you embedded references to our regs in there. And that's so helpful. So I noticed that. Thank you.
Thank you for including all of the hyperlinks to all the forms, and it just makes it so much easier as you're going through the information, and the form is right there because it's highlighted. So I think that, and super excited about the top things that people are looking for being accessible right on the landing page.
Okay, so then we'll go into the licensees tab. So on this tab, this is what that alert box would look like if we were to have them. Right now, this is the only tab that has one. And then if there's multiple, they would just all be listed like underneath each other there. Okay. And then underneath that, we did just like the homepage, pulled out the top 3 things that people visit when they go to this tab. So those are listed there. And then underneath that is just some other resources. So again, the California Laws and Regulations book, request for a wall certificate, and Breeze FAQs. And then again, the navigation will stay the same as you go through this tab. So up top, we have licensee FAQs. And these have a drop down. So it has the question, then when you click it, it'll drop down with the answer. And then if there are links that'll give you more information, those are listed there as well for you to just click on and go to. After that, we have the report mail or email address change. And this gives information on that and how to do it. And then also there's the link to go ahead and submit it. And then there's also FAQs about that as well. And then we have the report name change. Same thing, gives you information, there's FAQs, and then the link to directly go and do that. Verify a license. This changed from our last website. We had a long conversation about like how does a user know the difference between verifying a license of like another practitioner or like their own, physical therapist versus how to get a verification for their own license if they need it to send to another state or whatnot. So we created this page that now tells you the differences, and then you click the option that pertains to what you want to do. So that way it wasn't confusing anymore as like verify a license, request license verification. They're kind of the same with just a different wording. So we tried to make it less confusing this way. And again, FAQs on those as well. And then under that, we have the expert consultant. This gives information on that and how to apply if you wanted to become an expert consultant for the board or a practice monitor. And then FAQs related to that as well. And then probation information. And we also have the link there to our substance abuse rehabilitation program page. And then we also have that again in the navigation underneath probation information too. And this goes into the program more and what it's about and things like that. So all the different questions and information pertaining to that. And then we have a petition for penalty relief is under that. And then all that information that goes with that as well. Are there any questions on the licensee tab?
Comment?
Yes.
As a licensee, when we go in to renew our license, how awesome is that to see the choices on the left? Because we might not have come to this page for those reasons, but we might net some really good expert consultants because of this. So that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, the two main tabs with applicants and licensees being kind of the largest amount of traffic to the website, we wanted to make everything as accessible as possible, and also kind of like you said, take advantage of the real estate on the page. And I think just from a week's long display to the public at this point, I've gotten a lot of really positive feedback. Everybody seems to like it. Everybody likes the display itself better. It's more visually appealing, which we could all agree that the template that we had before was a little antiquated, a little outdated, a little Netscape-ish for those of us that are old enough to remember what Netscape was. But for those two tabs, the work that was done in applications and licensing by April and Vincent and Sarah and her staff and everybody that was trying to create and formulate the perfect page for the stakeholder. To give you an insight as to kind of what those sessions looked like, which were hours long at a time, and might come down to catching me happen to walk by and say, hey, come in here, we're going to try and figure out like what icon we should be using for this little tiny portion of that navigation bar on the left. And I would just muck things up, right? Like it was like, you shouldn't have asked me that question. But so you understand the intricacy of what all has been done. Every little detail on the page, icon, placement, the bars, the idea of doing drop downs or not doing drop downs, the three primary buttons on each tab, all of that is born of the ideas of staff, you know, having years of experience working on that old site and wishing what they could have.
I do want to also, again, thank Clara and Kristen for their patience, because there were times that we went through, we provided initial feedback, and then later went back and decided to change things again. They were very patient with us. And so, yeah, thank you.
Yes.
And there may have been times in those instances where we went back to our original choice even.
Before we do go off this page though, I do want to click into continuing competency real quick. And here you can see, this is where our approval agencies will be listed as well. So you have all of the information on continuing competency and what's required, acceptable coursework, traditional alternative pathways. And then here we have our recognized approval agency. So if we click on that, here we have another one of those alert boxes within, you know, the licensees tab and the approval agencies. And if you scroll down, we changed the way this looked too. Before we have you can pick by alphabetical order, all of the different agencies and things like that. And we just changed the look of it a little bit from what it looked like on the old website. So this was another change that was made.
I think the other important part about the alerts at the top of the page, as you can see, is those were those approval agencies that you as members, you know, were brought briefing papers that said, you know, they're no longer going to be a recognized approval agency. So it's one of those things that they see as soon as they hit this page, you know, that there are a few, and that will change over time with the most recent additions or removal of recognitions.
I like what you did with the display, because I think before it was just an ongoing list. Yeah. And so, if someone were to come to this website and want to apply to be an approval agency, is that easily found on this page?
It would be a page back. It would be in here.
Ah,
Oh, that's the exemption.
is that where the application is?
A recognized approval agency, they contact the board for that application, and we will provide that information to them.
So you can't do it on the website?
It's not currently posted on the website.
Is there information on there that says to contact the board?
No, not yet.
Okay, thank you. And then if you scroll down just a little bit, I was wondering if you clicked on the alternate pathway, if that looks different than the old website.
Is it further down? Which area are you talking
The
about?
alternate pathway? I think it's toward the top.
Yeah, toward the top.
Under acceptable.
Right there.
So there's a link to the regulation.
Yeah, can you click that, please? And then. Yep, it looks good.
Keep going. Should,
Looks
so
good.
we used to have a, even incorporated into the regulation, what looked to be like a carbon copy of a document. And so now we have broken it out in a better table, so it's much easier to read. It looked like something that had been copied of a copy of a copy of a copy. So.
Looks great. Thank you.
Any other questions on the licensee tab? No? Okay.
I just have a general question. When we click on the top, the buttons on top, is there any way we can have it lit up or marked as, you know, because if I'm a consumer, I'm traveling away from the first page where it says continue competency. I don't know. How do I tell which tab I'm on?
In the navigation sidebar, you'll look at the very top option is normally the name of the tab and it says home. So if you're in the applicants page, so this one's a little bit different, but licensees, you'll notice that here that it says licensees home and it stays consistent throughout. So if you click on any of these, you still see licensees home on the left side.
Okay.
But Mr. Kui, to your point, is if you happen to be in the consumer tab, that just the consumer icon at the top might change positive, negative, just to show that that's where you're at.
Show where you kind of.
That's something
where
that we
you
can
are
look
at
into.
the site, yeah.
Yeah, that's something we can definitely look into and talk to the web team about too.
One of the things that we did consider is that how we discussed earlier that there are certain things such as address or name change that overlap, and it could pertain to both applicants and licensees alike. It doesn't necessarily have a singular home or section. You know, it's contained within applicants and the licensees.
Yeah, well, I don't think that. I think what I meant was basically an indication, of which main tab I'm looking for information under right
Yeah.
now, right? So just that connectivity. The reason I picked up on that is that I'm helping somebody doing a website, and that was one of the things that people were reviewing it came up and says, you got so many, when you get a site that with some complexities, they don't know where they travel it away from that tab, or they're still under the main captions.
Yeah, we can explore options on indicators pointing towards to help you get an idea of what
Right.
area
So
you're
what they
still in.
did was actually change the color of it.
Yeah.
Every time you were staying on something.
Just on the
then
icon
just
itself.
on the icon.
Yeah, that makes
kind of
sense.
changes the color, so you
And I think it would be most helpful when you're on those first and second layers of that tab, like to your point, because name and address change is shared between two tabs. Once you get there, that functionality is not as important, but just that home page of the consumer tab would change the highlight of that consumer, or the things that are, especially when it comes to consumers, right? Trying to hold, their attention in their tab and make them comfortable where they're at with the information that they're being provided, highlight the tab. For those things that are repetition, then the coloring would go away. But I mean, just for those first and second layers of each tab, that would probably work well.
Thank you.
Just for a point of pronunciation, we want to make sure that our newest board member's last name is pronounced correctly, and it's Q.
Q.
Okay, got it.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, we're gonna go into the consumers tab. So, again, we pulled out complaint information and DCA license search as the two main buttons here. We do have a side navigation, again, that will stay consistent throughout this tab. Underneath, we do have an overview, and this just gives information on the Consumer Protection Services Program and what they do and their responsibilities. And then one thing that's a little bit different on this tab compared to the other tabs is we have this need help box, and it has the direct line to the Consumer Protection Services Department or program, and then also the contact. When you click on that, it'll take you, which we'll go over this contact page later, but it'll take you to the contact page, and as you can see, it's already pre-filled that you came from that tab. If you were to go to this page from any of the other tabs, it would already be pre-filled too, based on where you came from, but you can change that if needed. But the reason why I wanted to point that out in the consumers tab is that we really wanted our consumers to be able to reach us fast, not have to look through the website and, okay, go to the contact us page, where if they were on this page, it's always right there. It has our phone number, it has, the link to our contact page where they can fill out that form that we'll talk about later. So that was a big deal for us, that our consumers can reach us quickly. So going through the tabs, so we have the first item there is complaint information. And this has an online complaint tutorial, submit the online complaint, and then submit the complaint by mail, and then information on how to submit a complaint to us is listed there. And then under that, we have the complaint process overview. And this is just the diagram that goes over how a complaint goes through when we get it and what happens after. So just that process.
I really think that's great transparency.
Yeah. And then after that, we have patients' rights, which goes over HIPAA and has their website there as well for the user. And then we have types of complaints, which is a drop down, and it lists the different types of complaints that someone can look into depending on what they're looking for. And each of those has information on each one, as well as the statutes below that pertain to that. And then we have the FAQs. And so there's the general practice and protocol FAQs, and then medical record FAQs. And then underneath that, we have our notice to consumer, and it has them all listed there and translated to the various languages that we offer that in. And then it also has information about it above. And so this is our consumer page, and then the next tab we'll go into after we ask to see if anybody has any questions is the enforcement. In the past, those were combined, and again, we wanted to really make a tab that stuck out to just our consumers, so we did split that. So that enforcement tab is brand new, and we'll go into that next. But are there any questions on the consumer tab?
I think under patient rights, like one of the things that when I'm with physical therapist students that I drive home is that the consumer has the right to know who's treating them, right? So is there anything on here to point that out to consumers on their end?
Not as of yet. So one of the things that was very clear is that this was a perfect place for us to put like the HIPAA designations, but we're going to expand further into what to expect when you're receiving PT care and those kind of things where there are future changes that we knew that were going to be made, but we weren't going to hold up the go live to get them. So, but they're on the calendar to be done.
I mean, this is a fantastic start to consumer outreach.
Mhm.
This is fantastic because we've been trying to figure out how to do that. And this is a wonderful place for them to just go and get some general information. So, kudos.
Any other questions or comments on this tab?
Could you just go to types of complaints and just click that as a drop down? So I think that's another part where we tried to make that information as accessible as possible for legitimizing somebody's idea or belief when they came to the page. What do I qualify for as a consumer? What my issue is? And so each one of those sections under there has its own, like substandard care of negligence gives a descriptor if that really is something that pertains to you as a consumer. So again, that kind of goes towards under patients' rights. There are some of the stuff that we're talking about would be patients' rights, but the information right now is under the complaint area of it. But we'll beef up the patients' rights area as well.
I think the way you said it, which is what to expect when you have a physical therapy appointment, is, I think, really a great place to help people know what is within normal. And, because a lot of people they literally do not know what to expect.
Oh, yeah,
and they just accept a lot of things that are inappropriate and or not standard of care.
Sure.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on this tab? Okay, so we'll move on to enforcement. Again, this is a new tab. A lot of this information was prior in the consumers tab, and then some of it's new information as well. So again, we did want to separate those and just for the consumer so that they would have their own section there as well. So again, we pulled out the main items here. So we have complaint information, performance measures, DCA license search, and then discipline and citations. This is our guidelines book. So that'll take them directly there. And then if you scroll down, okay. And so then again, side navigation, it'll stay consistent throughout the whole enforcement tab. So when we click on citations and disciplinary actions, this goes over what they are. It explains the administrative citations and fine language below. Another link to subscribe to our mailing address is in this page also. And then other definitions and things like that. And then if you go into the expert consultant practice monitor program, so this is what we were talking about where this page, some of these pages are in two different locations but they go to the same landing page. So this was in the licensees one as well. Probation information, this was also in the licensee tab, and it's also here in the enforcement tab. Same with the last two, substance abuse rehabilitation program and petition for penalty reduction. Under that, though, we do have where you can pay your fine online. So it's separated out just like the apply online was in the applicants tab. And so this is new. We do have our e-blast, which is just our general one that people can sign up for on our old website. we now created a way for people can subscribe to the disciplinary actions one too. So when you go to click on any of our links throughout our whole site that goes to our e-blast, it's going to come up with a form like this now, where you'll enter your email address, and then under you can pick what lists you want, or you can subscribe to both. So you can be in the interested parties, which is where we have like our newsletters, board meeting information, all of that kind of stuff. Or you can sign up for the disciplinary actions one as well, and that one gets e-blast monthly to subscribers. And back to the consumers tab, or enforcement, I'm sorry. So that is the new enforcement tab. Are there any questions or comments on that?
Sometimes when licensees get progress notes, the first thing they do is go all the way to the back and look at disciplinary actions, administrative actions. And so is there a place here to view that other than subscribing to the e-blast?
It's funny you asked that because there is not yet, but we are working on that.
So
it's up, it's coming up.
before the introduction of the old website template and before Breeze, we had a section on our website that essentially alphabetized and in a chronology also listed the discipline that the board had done. And I've gotten a lot of feedback that that's a missing element in the modernization of what Breeze brought to us. People would like to be able to go to the board's website and pick a name similar to what we had for the recognized approval agencies by selecting under K, pull up Kaiser, what did he get in trouble for, see the accusations, see the documents, those kind of things. When we moved over to Breeze and subsequent from Breeze also to that DCA search.dca.ca.gov, where all the documents are kind of available and you can search by so many different ways, it's not as cherry pickable, right? And so one of the visions of the enforcement tab is to kind of meet that old functionality with the new functionality halfway, similar to what you're saying with the newsletter, where it lists, here's the discipline, but also trying to incorporate that old idea of the alphabetized section of it, so you could pull that up and look at it that way, but also just the most recent discipline. Trying to marry those two things is actually a lot more difficult than you might think, because one is, I also don't want to have two data sets in two different locations, right? I want one to drive the other. So we know that the search.dca.ca.gov is accurate. We're trying to figure out a way for that to feed whatever that information is that we're talking about in the enforcement tab, so that there's not any maintenance and there's no room for error, and we're not posting some on one but not the other, things like that. So it's coming.
I'm wondering if we didn't want to do something more intricate, could we put a link to the most recent progress notes and put, say, see the back?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And when I'm not, without stealing April's thunder, when you get to the publications tab and those kind of things, that's when the progress notes shine.
I think that I used that very old process at one point when I was a supervisor in a hiring position. And I did like, I think what it showed me was the specificity and the in-depth review that the enforcement program does, that gave me an awareness and appreciation for that. I don't know that it's necessary all the time. I mean, this is good information in the back, but there was something about understanding the process that actually got me interested in being on the board. So I'm not thinking that's a negative thing.
And as an employer, that's a good example. There's a certain utility to having that information set aside, where this is just all the discipline and this is just all the citations, and it's easy to look at, where when you go to the search.dca.ca, that mouthful website, you have to know what you're looking for, or you have to know how to navigate that website. And one of those things is you could say, filter it by disciplinary order, or filter it by who's on probation, and then click in and see that. You can get the same thing, but it's not as readily accessible as if you just have that list that's alphabetized. And one of the things that to Dr. Are's point about the progress notes is I have that same experience. Whenever the progress notes go out and staff and April have spent so much time and board presidents have written opening statements and, board members have written articles, my licensees go straight to the back of the book and they just want to know who got in trouble and, for what. And there's a value to that. Obviously, they wouldn't go there if there wasn't. And so, trying to make that information as accessible without being kind of the Debbie Downer either, right? Like, we're not going to point out that this is always the right. Well, our newsletters used to list our discipline, but they didn't even list congratulations to new licensees, right? So to kind of offset that negative kind of connotation of a newsletter, here's a positive note as well. But being able to see that and look for it, which I think is clearly marked kind of underneath that badge, right? Like, here's where we put our trouble stuff. Everything else is going to have that kind of positive spin to it. Applicants have a good experience, licensees have a good experience. But if what you're really here is to see kind of the dark side of what we do, then go to the badge.
Jason, I have a question for you regarding Breeze from a consumer standpoint. Is there a way to subscribe to your practitioner so if they did have discipline on their license, you would be notified then versus you having to search for them? Could it be like an automated system?
Yeah. So if you are utilizing Breeze as a consumer, which I would highly encourage all of my licensed licensees who have to go to Breeze and create an account to renew their license anyway, you might as well, double the utility of it and use it as a consumer too. You can subscribe to your primary care physician, to your dentist, to your nurses, those kind of things, and you can receive an alert should their license status change. And so going from a current license to maybe a discipline license. Yes, one caveat though. That would only work for those licensees that are under the Breeze system. And so Breeze was originally a 3-phase project of which we were the second phase. The third phase are now entering into a number of different types of data sets, a Salesforce data set or different software programs that don't have that same bridge capability. And the only happy medium that we have to bring all that information together is that search.dca website, but that doesn't include the subscriptions, right? So as a Breeze user, as long as the license types that you're applying towards are Breeze license types, you can get those alerts that say, yes, my dentist just got put on probation, or my physician or surgeon's license moved from current and valid to delinquent. You might be the first person that goes in and tells them, hey, forget to renew your license because your license is delinquent online.
Any other questions or comments? No? Okay, we'll move on to the publications tab. So the publications tab will always have our main publications, the most current, front and center like this. So as you can see, we have the most current sunset, the most current strategic plan, guidelines for issuing citations and imposing discipline, and then our California laws and regulations. And then we also have our 2 most current progress notes. We do publish 2 a year, and so we'll always have those 2 for that current year, or the 2 most recent right there. And then if you scroll down, we have board-specific documents, consumer protection services program publications, communication education publications, and then all of our previous newsletters as well. So this changed a lot too. On our old site, they were just kind of listed. So we wanted to just put those most current front and center right when you click on that, so you don't have to go search for them. Any questions?
Comment? That is awesome. That looks sharp. Yeah, nicely done.
Thank you. Okay, and then our forms tab. So this also has changed drastically from the last previous website. Again, before these were all listed. we now have them to where on that side navigation box, they are filtered by applicant, licensee, and consumer protection services forms, or again, you can click all and they'll all be listed. When you click on one, if you just click on that applicant, so application for initial license, you can see that it'll change now. There's only 3 as opposed to the long list. But when you click on any one of them and do that, it's a drop down. It gives you now the form name, the form description, and if you can apply online, there's that option there, and then also download PDF version of each one. If there is a PDF version, some of these will take you to like Breeze, so there won't be a PDF version, but if there is, again, that'll be listed there as well.
There's also the search bar over here up top. So if you know the name of the document or request form that you're looking for, you can type it into here as well.
Yep. Any questions or comments on the Forms tab?
The forms are also found in other areas. Yeah.
Throughout the website? Yes. So like in any of the other tabs, if we're referencing any of these forms, there's a link that'll take you straight there as well.
But if your sole intent of coming to the board was to locate a specific form, we wanted to just have that kind of central repository, selectable from the top bar, searchable for whatever it is. So maybe you don't have to go through the am I a licensee, am I a consumer, am I an applicant discussion. You're just there for a form. It should be easy to find.
So give us, if you don't mind, Jason, give us an example of one that someone might come here for other than those things, and let's type it in.
Vincent's example was good with just address.
Yes. Yep. Perfect.
And you'll see there at the bottom right, it kind of tells you that it's located in both the applicant and the licensee forms section.
And then if you click on it, and in this case, we want everybody to utilize the online service to do it. And that's why it's grayed out when it shows the PDF. If there is a situation where someone, out of necessity or for whatever reason, has to have, a downloaded PDF copy of that, they can contact staff and staff will provide them that as an access point. But we really wanted to drive the traffic to the online portion for the sake of, admin resources, but for their sake too. If they go online and they make the change and they do the key data entry, they make sure that it gets done and it takes effect that day, right? If they submit a paper form, like everything that, happens on paper, it slows it down a little bit.
Why do we have the PDF column?
The PDF column is part of the formatting for just all of
Yeah.
everything. And there are a lot that we still provide the PDF for.
Any other questions or comments on the Forms tab? Okay. The Laws tab was also drastically changed from our previous one. Before, when we go to schools and do our outreach presentations, one of the questions we always ask the students is, what is the difference between a law and a regulation? And so we figured if we expect our students to know that and we teach them that, we should have it on our website for anybody else to learn that as well. So we did put the definitions to both. Under laws, we also have the California Laws and Regulations book listed, and also a link to the State Senate's website so people can get more information on the legislative process. And then under regulations, there's information on what a regulation is and how they're made also. And then again, we have the California Code of Regulations and the guidelines for issuing citations and imposing discipline. And then under that, the Office of Administrative Law's website, which shows the rulemaking process. And then we again have a side navigation that'll follow the user throughout this tab. So the first thing we have is our Physical Therapy Practice Act. And this has the whole act is listed here. And you can scroll all the way down. You can see all the different codes and stuff. And then underneath that, we have pending legislation. This is a new thing. We did not have this on our last website either, and it also talks about the bills that are in the current legislative session and the board's position and support letters on those. And then underneath that, we have the newly adopted laws and regulations. And that lists those there. Proposed regulations. So these will all be here. And then we have legal opinions and precedential decisions. Are there any questions or comments on the new laws tab?
I'm just looking on the one that's supposed to be proposed regulations. Did we write a letter of support for pelvic or postpartum? I'm just wondering if it was supposed to be here.
For proposed legislation, you mean?
Yeah, for legislation. Didn't we write a letter of support?
We did. We are currently going to be adding that.
Oh, adding that. Okay. So that's where it would be, right? Okay. I'm not okay.
I think it's really awesome that we're including the letters of support that consumers and licensees can see what our position is and the actual language that we used when we submitted the letter.
And that'll be the threshold, right? So if it gets posted on that list, it's because you took some position other than neutral. So if there are oppositions, they will be posted there as well in a second category.
It's so much better. So much better. I'm wondering, this is like a big ask, but like if someone wanted to come to the Practice Act page and find something specifically, and just looking at all the headings, they weren't sure where to look. Could there be a search bar here too? Or would that be that'd be difficult to do?
It would be difficult to do because, well, there's two things, but hold on, Vincent, don't spring it yet. Go to the Practice Act and then click on that first link, administration. All right, so see, now we've exited our website and gone into California's legislative website. So we hyperlink those over and we have to maintain those over time, but as they change, it's easier to have it here. So I can't make an indexable search on the PTBC website of DCA, of California's LegInfo website. But now go back to the homepage and click search. And so this generalized search, and you might want to give us an example, like so that will take you to the frequently asked questions for continuing competency that gives you the information about alternate pathway. Or at least it should. Now, and I kind of don't know if I should mention this or I would be stealing your thunder if I mention this. You might have this in your presentation, I don't know it. We're still experimenting with what's called the search crawler for this website. And so it's a Google search crawler, but the way we understand it or the way it's been presented to us by DCA is, should we want to refine the search results, we can. So like an example would be alternate pathway, that we saw what it came up with naturally as part of its Google search, but maybe we want something that's more direct, right? Okay.
Supervision of aids.
You wanna try that one? And then put AIDS in it in the search, that's it, and click it again. Because I think I know what.
There might be an E at the end of aid.
Yeah, there's E.
That's okay.
So, but this would be a good example where the answer is going to be there, but it might be 8th, 9th, 10th result. That is essentially the one we're looking for in this context. But we can manipulate that search criteria to make it list as first or 2nd, or even. I liked your example of alternate pathways because the way I understand it is there might even be a way for us to say the search result is the page, like at least a little small excerpt of it. So we're going to start playing with that. And for me, it's kind of for the consumer protection side of things where, like as an example, thinking about the way the audience of consumers might come to the website and what keywords they might use to search from might be different than what we would expect in the nomenclature of our daily lives, right? And so in doing that, really kind of utilizing out of the box, maybe involve some people that, what names, what keywords would you search for? And then kind of reverse engineer that and try to tailor those Google search results.
Yeah, because nowadays a lot of times they're saying tech
Yeah.
instead of AV,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. But I think in the past, like if I were to ask a student, look up supervision for fill in the blank, aid, PTA, PTLA, whatever, and they Googled it, it wasn't always easy to find it in the Practice Act.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Jason and Vincent.
Okay, so we'll go on to the About Us page at the top. So when you click this, again, mission and vision right there front and center, then it talks about what is the Physical Therapy Board of California. So it gives all of that information right there and what services we provide to consumers and then other resources. So then we have the Department of Consumer Affairs leadership and board member information as well. At the top, we do have another side navigation. The first thing will be board members. And this is all of your guys' pictures and bios listed here. And then also how to apply to become a board member and all, information about being a board member is right there as well.
I have a comment. It says that we're currently comprised of 7 members. Is there a way to highlight that we have a vacancy on this page?
I think there's a placeholder for the vacant position, but in the actual the text at the top, you mean?
It's in the.
It says board status. Currently, there are 7 active members. It's towards the bottom.
Oh, yeah, okay. Is there a vacant? We had a picture where it was a vacant picture for the vacancy. Is it still there?
No, that's one of the things we need to have them add back on
Okay.
from when they did the flip.
Okay. So anytime that they're listed, we're going to keep them in the tracks other than the president and vice president. Those will always be at the top, but the other positions will be in the track position that they are in. And if one of those happens to be vacant, it'll be listed there, with a picture icon of a, cartoon vacancy, and then a description that position's vacant and what its appointing power is and what the term would be.
And then under board members, we have board staff. And this lists all of PTBC's leadership, and then it talks about the different programs and what each program is responsible for and what they do for the board. And under that, this is our meetings page that we showed you guys earlier. Again, it has all of our current meetings here. All the way at the bottom, there's information on the Bagley Keene Open Meeting Act and things like that. And then at the top, here's our archives page. So the first thing you're going to see here is that YouTube channel, so you can go and view previous meetings. And then we also have this jump to a year. So you can pick any of these years, and when you click on it, it's going to automatically jump you to that year, and it'll show you the different, all the meeting dates and all the materials, agenda, minutes, and webcasts for all the meetings that happened in that year. And then our career opportunities page. This before we used to just post the job links when we had them. Now we have it going to the CalHR website, and it's already pre-filled for our board. So anything that we have listed will be under here. page. Any questions or comments on this one?
Under board staff, where the units or the programs are listed, might we consider contact information?
Those conversations about the development of the website and going back and forth, that was one of those things where it was hotly debated, right? Because we wanted all to contact us, and you'll see why once we get to the contact form itself, why we wanted to not have separate points of contact for contact us.
Yeah, I'll talk about that.
Let's do that.
A little.
Yeah.
We have an explanation for that. Any other questions on this page? No? Okay. So our contact us page. So before we used to have the programs listed, and they did have the contact information there. However, what we noticed is we would have a lot of issues with stakeholders reaching out to us, and then they didn't provide all of the necessary information we needed in order to be able to help them. So there was a lot of this back and forth emailing, and sometimes, it would take a while, and then by the time, they would respond, or they would have already got their answer by some other means, or they just didn't respond, or, something would happen. So we created this contact us page. So when you click on each section of this as we go through it, which we'll do a demo one with you, as you click on each one, there's specific values, and based on what you pick, the next drop down will have specific items that relate to whatever you chose prior. So, for example, so Vincent's putting in, so an applicant, your full name and email address. Then you have to pick your license type. So if you're applying as a physical therapist or a physical therapist assistant, depending on what you pick, it's going to change the following drop-down box. So then physical therapist, so education, are you accredited, non-accredited? Again, depending on what you pick, it's going to change the reason for your inquiries here. It's going to change the reason that you can select from.
So one of the things. So if you notice, when I select accredited, reason for inquiry, you have your options there. One of which you'll notice that clinical service, for example, is not listed there. You select non-accredited, and you go there, you'll see clinical service. So it just gives you the options that are appropriate for your previous selection, based on your previous selection.
It's like a choose your own adventure book.
And then
Remember that?
Once you create your message and you send it, it's going to be routed to the appropriate unit. So they have different email addresses for each of these different things, and depending on what the user selects, it's going to go directly to that person that can help them with that, instead of it accidentally going to applications when they have a question about renewing their license or something like that. It'll go directly to that unit. And then
I have a question, April.
Yes.
I selected I'm a public/consumer, and under reason for inquiry, it says PRA request. What is a PRA request? And perhaps we should spell that out so it's a little bit more clear.
Yeah, Public Records Act request. So similar to kind of a FOIA request at the federal level, if you as a public member wanted certain documents and you were submitting under the Public Records Act, that request, but we could spell that out so PRA is more understandable.
Thank you.
Does that relate to board business? PRA request of the board?
So yeah, a PRA request can ask for any number of things from the board. It could be specific to a licensee. We want to see their license file, what was in the license file. Sometimes we'll get PRA requests into enforcement cases, which obviously our answers are limited because of exclusions to the statute that allows for that PRA. But it could be something like, how many times has the board met, in certain year and certain location, right? I mean, it's dependent upon who's asking and what their motive for asking the question is. But Public Records Act dictates how much time we have to respond to that request and what the reasonable amount of collection of data and work that has to go into it. Even if we're providing it to them in electronic format or printed format, and if we're going to print it, should we charge fees for it? I mean, there's so much to that. But anything that a government agency does will fall under the PRA. And then there are a few exceptions of things that we cannot reveal, and those are carved out in that PRA Act as well.
So that includes like media requests, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I just want to kind of recap on there's a few reasons to the advantages of switching over to the contact form rather than just providing all of our different unit email addresses. First and foremost is there are web crawlers that will just they pull email addresses from all these websites and then they just spam you, right? So it helps with the department in weeding those out, because in this contact form there's actually a CAPTCHA check that makes sure that you are in fact a human and requesting that information. So it reduces the amount of spam that we receive, and that in turn obviously it helps us to be able to respond quicker to inquiries. As April mentioned earlier, the second reason that is advantageous of switching over to this contact form is that it requires specific information that we would need to be able to address the inquiry, where sometimes before we might receive an email that just simply says, I want to submit a complaint. Or just as an example, we don't have any information about the individual, or let's say another example is a licensee, here's my address change. Well, you didn't send us your first and last name, any identifiable information, your license number perhaps that we need to process that request. So that's another thing. It just helps. All of this just points towards us being able to streamline and get back to respond to people as quickly as possible. The third reason for that that actually helps us to streamline is dependent on these based on these combination of values that are selected, it is routed to the unit that it needs to go to. So sometimes our stakeholders weren't sure, do I send an email to this unit or to this unit? I'm not quite sure. Well, it kind of walks you through the process here. Once you click submit, based on those drop-down values that you selected, it'll go to the appropriate unit. And therefore, there's not the scenario where we receive something in applications where a person is asking about an update on the complaint status. And then, that causes a delay where we need to forward it to the CPS unit. So it just all helps with streamline that process.
And then on the side navigations here, we just have our address, office hours. We have the consumer complaint line and then our other phone numbers as well. And again, join the board's e-blast and receive notifications for. And when they go to this page, it gives them the option to join the main interested parties list or the disciplinary actions or both of them. Any questions or comments on this?
I have a comment. I think the contact us form is really great too for security purposes, because I know a lot of phishing emails get sent if your email's listed on the website, and then that could be like a security issue. So I'm loving the form and how it sends it directly to the person who needs to receive that inquiry. Question why we're not collecting a phone number in case they have a typo in their email address. Is there another way to contact them, or maybe make them enter their email twice to verify that they got it correct when they entered it? Your thoughts?
That's something that we definitely can look into adding. That's what we're going to be looking to do, is get that feedback. So we will take note of that and look at adding the emails, another contact method.
My comments along the same line. Sometimes people just want to pick up the phone and call and get their question answered, and not use a form. And so I think that's another reason why I was asking why there aren't contact numbers for each unit listed on board staff.
So,
Go ahead.
okay, so one of the things is the main line. When you call that, it sends the caller to a phone tree where they can route themselves to that unit, and it'll ring directly to that unit. So that's why there's just the main line, but they'll have the opportunity to get forward to that appropriate unit.
Very nice.
But on top of that, so thinking about that idea of streamlining communication, if it's something that we've already established our initial like point of contact, like they're an applicant, the correspondence that's sent back to them will have direct extensions to those analysts that are assigned to that application. But to Katarina's point is that security part, that additional part of that security is not putting that name out there without having that initial point of contact first, right? This is also something that's going to be implemented department-wide because of just that, the phishing emails and those kind of things that are being sent out. One of the examples is like for PRA requests or for issues involving Americans with Disability Act. You know, we have liaison staff that are designated to those roles where typically we would put that information right there on the website. You can find who the name, the phone number, and the email address. And those were the victims that we would get for the phishing emails, right? Because crawlers found that email address on the website and you'd get a lot of traffic that way. Now they can still get there from here and it's pre-screened. And all it is kind of like a coin sorter, right? Where you put all the change in and it puts them in the column that they need to be in, and we'll get to them that much quicker. And we'll already have some of the information that we need from them to discuss their issue. But for those licensees that we've already established that initial point of contact, the application process for students and future applicants, but even subjects of complainants themselves, the correspondents will have direct lines of communication.
So do the programs have generic email addresses?
Yeah, some do, and some of these, the results of some of these will drop into a queue. As an example, something that any application analyst could answer to, or something that any enforcement analyst could answer to. But there are some in there that are actually tailored that go to a specific person because that happens to be in the workflow. That's their duty. And so that's the kind of nice part of that filter is it could be you go to a queue where you get addressed quicker because all of staff are pulling from that same queue versus you have to wait until that person checks their email.
Right.
I feel like this question might come up in this space. Obviously, even before our old website, you had to put in your information if you wanted a response back. So do we have a format for any type of anonymous questions? Is that only available by phone? And I mean, while I know that people who are putting in a request to investigate disciplinary action have to put their information so they can be
Kind of.
I mean,
right?
tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, so for the idea of a consumer who wants to file a complaint but remain anonymous, that functionality still exists because they're going through an online complaint process, which is different than this, right? So if that's the choice that they're making is that they want to file a complaint, they can file a complaint. And we're even going to give them a little information in doing that when it comes to the anonymity, that if you really want to remain anonymous, don't provide anything to which you could be identified by. Now, if you're going to do that, you're going to make this investigation extremely hard, right? So give us as much information as you possibly can, dates, times, names, all those kind of things. But if you truly want to remain anonymous, don't send me an email address, don't give me a phone number, because all of those things eventually at some point down the line, subject to action, could be part of discovery and given to the respondent's attorney. It's part of discovery. It's part of their, they have a constitutional right to face their accuser if we know who their accuser is. If I know it, I have to reveal it. If I don't know it, because they were really good at remaining anonymous and there's no way for me to discern who they are, then I've got no obligation to pursue and try and figure out who they are. So for that purpose, on the complaint side, the only issue I have with that too is that they may be asking a question, but how do I get back to them? If you're going to remain totally anonymous, it's hard.
So that process still exists if you call, like, it's almost like a hot tip or, you know.
If they call in,
Mhm.
they'll always be able to go like Vincent was talking about. You go through the phone tree, and based on your input, you end up with Consumer Protection Services, and one of the analysts answers the phone. You can ask those generalized questions and still kind of remain at arm's length and not tell them who you are, and the analyst will help you. They'll give you some of the same guidance that I just did, that if you'd like to file a complaint, it's going to be very difficult to investigate if you continue to remain anonymous, unless you can give us the level of detail we need in the investigation.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people probably reach out just to get the information to know, okay, so I'm currently still seeing this therapist. What's that going to mean? How? And so they may not be ready to file until they have a little more information as to what the process will include and how it will maybe potentially impact them. So maybe is that on, is that information? I know you don't want to encourage it, but as long as people, I guess, know that they can use the phone number. They don't have to use the.
And if they actually are going through either the consumers tab and they select file a complaint, again, that takes them to a whole different online submission and provides that guidance. But I'll tell you that, you know, with just the analysts and the enforcement staff that we have in the room, Vincent being a formal analyst, that's a daily occurrence, right? Answering those phones and taking those calls and having somebody who's just kind of probing what their options are all the time. In the actual complaint form under consumers, we're going to ask for a little bit more detail. You know, we're going to explain why we need the detail. If you're filing a complaint, here's the pertinent information that is needed. If you're going to provide us with a disclosure to your medical records and those kind of things, here's the forms. And, you know, so we're trying to meet them wherever they are in that idea. If they're just set and they want to file a complaint, we want to give them everything that they need. If they're undecided, we want to help them make that decision.
I found it actually. It's at the bottom. It says anonymous complaints at the bottom of submit a complaint online.
And that's unusual. You'll find in government, anonymous complaints sometimes aren't accepted, let alone processed at all.
Real quick too, another thing on this website is the translate this site. You can select a language. Some other agencies and boards and other just websites that we were looking at when we were creating ours, they'll have a button that sometimes just says just translate. And we went back and forth on this a lot. Like, do we just do a button and then when they click it, then they can pick the language, or do we keep? Because some don't use the Google one anymore. Or do we keep it? And we were told that if you keep it, you can keep it for, you know, whenever. But if you get rid of it, it's like you lose it. You don't ever get it back, type of thing. And we just kind of, after talking about it, thought that with it, it's kind of known. Like, you see it, you know it's a translate box. Whereas if you just have a button that just says translate, well, if you don't speak English, how do you know that that's what that button does? So that was our kind of came to our deciding factor in keeping it like this. And then I'm gonna go ahead and give it over to Vincent, and he's gonna go through how it looks. Our new site looks in a mobile view versus our old site, and how that looked in a mobile view, so you guys can kind of see the difference between that as well.
Can I ask another question about the contact us?
Yes.
Before we move on. I don't want to box us in, staff in. I'm just wondering if there can be some sort of reasonable expectation for response time. You know, so someone comes here and they put this in and they're wondering, am I going to get a call today? Am I going to get a call tomorrow? Am I going to get a call by the end of the week? And I'm sure it looks different for different programs, but that might be something nice to consider.
We might be able to incorporate something like that in the response they receive on submission, right? So after the filtering happens and we know what unit it's going to go to, there's a screen that's displayed that, you know, your request has been submitted, and we can edit the client text there. And so that's something we could look at.
The other thing I wanted to touch on is I'm not able to demonstrate this right now, but when you submit the contact us form, you do receive a verification, a confirmation email of all the information that was submitted sent back to your email. There any other questions or comments on that? Okay, really quickly, the last thing I just wanted to do, well, here I'll touch on this before I go on to that, but another option that you have here at the top right are some ADA options, perhaps high contrast and increase and decrease font size and that sort of thing. One of the main things on this website that is nice is it is more friendly with mobile view. So I'll kind of do a side by side so you can see. Sorry, I can't really get rid of this this column right here. But if you just go and you click, just even from the home page, you can see the old website doesn't exactly have a mobile view that's friendly to your phone. It kind of just it zooms out so everything is contained. Where here, everything is kind of shrunken down into a single column that makes things a lot easier to select and sift through what you're looking for. Right here, previously, let's say you were accessing our website from your cell phone. Sometimes if you're trying to hit a specific link, you might do what I call kind of fat fingering in a way, where you just, you touch something and it's just too small.
That's a dig at me, by the way. This is based on a conversation we just had.
It's just, so you would have to like zoom in to actually touch the, dig into the small detailed links, where here it's just easier to tap into those sections. So that's just what I wanted to demonstrate with that, because data nowadays statistics show that most people, especially with the younger crowds, they're accessing these sites with their cell phones as opposed to desktop computers.
Yeah, much more accessible mobile devices, but also iPads. I know that just reviewing the website from my iPad, it's a lot easier, a lot less pinch and zoom, a lot less trying to, kind of squeeze in so I could just read text because it didn't resize it as a result of, the resolution on the device I was looking at. And really, the homepage is a good example on how adaptable it is, because it eliminated the whole slideshow, right? Because the slideshow is not resizable. So, and on a mobile device, it's not exactly valuable real estate. So it's gone. The columns that used to take, across the screen horizontally are now vertical. All of those kind of things are so much more aimed at accessibility.
That is our new website. Are there any additional questions or comments at this time about, I guess, the overall website?
Just some kudos. Your legal counsel actually uses your website and other board websites quite a bit. And sometimes I'm looking very quickly to find disciplinary guidelines, your procedure manual. Sometimes I'm wondering if a particular question's on your application. And this is very intuitive and easy to follow. So very nice job with this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'd like to thank other staff too. There was a lot of staff that helped in this. And so, again, thank you to Kristen and Clara as well. So it was a big project, but we're really happy with it, and we're excited to get feedback from our stakeholders and everybody else going forward. So thank you.
How will you get that feedback?
We are going to create a survey, and then we're going to probably put it on our website, and then we're also going to try to e-blast it out if possible. So we're working on the survey part of that now. And then social media. It'll actually, the announcement of it being live will hit social media today at 1 o'clock. So.
But even just solicitation from like you as members, if you run across things, please, send them to us. I will tell you right now, there's already a running list of changes to be made to the existing website after its launch, where it was kind of like while you were developing it and you couldn't really envision it, you couldn't put a picture in your mind. Now that you see it, now it's displayed, there's already things that we know we're going to make future edits. And like I said, there were things that we knew when we went live were going to evolve over time, like the enforcement tab, where we knew we were going to go live without it, but that added functionality was just a much heavier lift. And it's something that, you know, once it comes available, it'll be something that you'll see as like an alert also, and even blast it out on social media.
Is there anywhere on this website that highlights our outreach efforts?
So, in our contact us page, there are options to request like the school presentations and things like that, consumer presentations and all of that. So those will all come directly to me. And then just our social medias, everywhere I could put it, I put it.
The only thing that I think those of you that are viewing it from non-government web tablets or anything like that can see there's that Facebook page on the home page just has a scroll. And so April, when they do outreach for certain schools, they blast that to Facebook, they blast that to Instagram, TikTok, and what have you, and you'll see those live blasts show up right on our homepage.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah, and we can't see it because of the security protocols for our government issued laptops. So.
Any further comments from board members? I think the PTBC staff are just awesome, outstanding, and this is amazing. Really good job. Any public comment on the new website? Mr. K?
If it's up and running now, when I go onto the website, I think I know it.
Oh, you have to. Yeah, okay, so I did that too. When you first go on, sometimes you have to refresh it and then refresh your page, because if you had it saved, like bookmarked or something in your phone or your computer, you have to refresh it and then the new one will pop up.
One of the other things too is what Mitch is seeing is a cached version, because he has the old website. There's cached files on your browser, the history and refresh website. One of the things, if you're getting that, what I suggest is in your browser settings, you can go to cache files, clear that, and then reload the website, and you should see the most current website.
Any further public comment? Can we give them a round of applause? Yes, you're right. Thank you guys for that. So we're gonna make a slight change on the agenda. We're gonna move item number 10 in front of item number 9 and open up for public comment on items not on the agenda. Any public comment on items not on the agenda? Not hearing any, then this will conclude our open meeting, and we will resume after lunch for a closed session.
That's correct, but we won't return back to the webcast until tomorrow morning.
Thank you, Jason.